Be at present, आप कितना total AUM manage कर रहे हो? And what has been the percentage CAGR roughly?
There's a PMS and there's a mutual fund. The mutual fund is new. We're managing today about 130 crores. PMS is about 7 odd years old. Manage about 2,000 crores there. So my own personal CAGR is over 18%.
What has been your best investment? I want to understand कि आपका thesis क्या था? आप companies invest करने के पहले क्या देखते हो?
We introduced the quantitative theory called momentum. पहले लोग कहते थे कि जब स्टॉक नीचे गिरा हुआ हो तब आप उसको लो. ये मोमेंटम कहता है कि जब स्टॉक सबसे ऊपर है तो एक्चुअली दैट इज द इंटरेस्टिंग कैंडिडेट टू बाय. So in momentum, for instance, Laurus Labs and all that stuff, they give a ridiculous return. We have a company it's called Kane's India. Kane's is up nearly 10x in 2 years.
तो on an average कितने stocks hold करने चाहिए? 10 stocks, 20 stocks. What is a good number?
So 10 बहुत कम है. आपको diversification नहीं मिलती है. Between 15 and 25 is nice for an individual.
What's the average holding period of a stock?
So average holding time for losers are less, about 30 days, 35 days, 40 days. But average holding time for winners can be as much as 2 years.
मुंबई वर्सेस बैंगलोर कौन सी सिटी ज्यादा पसंद है?
मतलब बैंगलोर में बहुत सारी चीजें अलग है. There is a fight of traffic. Mumbai is similar. When traffic is bad and weather is bad. Bangalore, at least the weather is good. In general, I think both cities, if you ask me, are an avoid.
सर आपका एक ट्विटर पे बैटल हुआ था विद अशनीर ग्रोवर. तो व्हाट ड्रोव यू फॉर दैट स्टैंड?
I guess
वीडियो देखने से पहले मेरी एक रिक्वेस्ट है आप सबसे. मैं YouTube एनालिटिक्स देख रहा था एंड वहां पर देखा कि 82.6% ऑफ माय ऑडियंस हु इज वाचिंग दिस कंटेंट हैज नॉट सब्सक्राइब टू द चैनल. अगर मैंने आपको थोड़ी सी वैल्यू प्रोवाइड की होगी एंड आपको अगर कंटेंट बहुत अच्छा लग रहा है, आई रिक्वेस्ट ऑल ऑफ यू टू प्लीज हिट द सब्सक्राइब बटन सो दैट वी कैन ब्रिंग यू द बेस्ट क्वालिटी ऑफ गेस्ट एंड गिव यू द मैक्सिमम वैल्यू पॉसिबल. थैंक यू सो मच फॉर सब्सक्राइबिंग टू आवर चैनल एंड एंजॉय दिस एंटायर एपिसोड ऑफ कॉन्वर्सेशन विद कुशल. मुंबई वर्सेस बैंगलोर, क्या डिफरेंसेस, क्या सिमिलैरिटीज रखती है आपको? कौन सी सिटी ज्यादा पसंद है?
now I like Bangalore, but I mean मतलब बैंगलोर में बहुत सारी चीजें अलग है. It's just there is a fight of traffic. जो Bangalore is worse than Bombay. Because Mumbai has got this nice coastal road. ये वो हमारे में coast नहीं है तो road भी नहीं है. मतलब ये मजा है. तो वो एक प्रॉब्लम है. लेकिन बैंगलोर हैज गुड क्लाइमेट. Very interesting. I mean, the foodie culture is very good over there. In general, I think both cities, if you ask me, are an avoid long term living के लिए. लेकिन अभी मतलब धंधा करना है तो धंधा करना है. You know, that Basanti saying of you can't घोड़ा घास से दोस्ती करेगी तो खाएगी क्या? At some level, you cannot say that Bangalore is bad and Bombay is bad and then फिर रहो वहाँ पे. But that way, I think both cities have their own this thing. They're very different cities. Bombay is very fast paced. यहाँ पे 6 बजे सुबह से action रहता है and all that. हमारे रोड में एक्शन रहता है, but generally Bangalore is a little bit slow in general. So that way it's different. But Bangalore has a lot different talent. जैसे tech का talent is a different level compared to Bombay. Tech salaries are also a different level compared to Bombay. Bombay real estate prices are a different level compared to anywhere else in India, not just Bangalore. पता नहीं क्या है वो जो मतलब यहाँ पे आके सडनली हर घर सोने वाले घर बन जाता है. बट अदर देन दैट दिस थिंग ऑल्सो आई थिंक स्मॉल थिंग्स लाइक आई वाज वॉकिंग हियर yesterday and you actually in the city you have good footpaths. Bangalore does not have easily accessible footpaths other than maybe just the central. So we are in the evolution process. मतलब वो part अभी तक स्टार्ट नहीं, वो ग्रोथ का पार्ट है, वो स्टार्ट नहीं हुआ है. ऑल्सो बैंगलोर हैज ग्रोन इन वेरी डिफरेंट वेज. Mumbai has, like, in the center, you have a lot of building societies, ये वो and all that. Bangalore, on the other hand, has had planned colonies and unplanned growth. So planned colonies are like Jayanagar, HSR layout, where roads are perpendicular to each other, wala funda. Baki har jagah, if there are roads, they are not perpendicular to each other, and mostly there are no roads, or mostly there are very very crazily built these things, because there were a series of villages and all that. वो जो like evolution हुआ है वो last like 10-15 years में हुआ है. And I actually was in Bangalore till 2007, from 1996. में शादी हुई, we were in Bangalore. And then we said यहाँ पे ट्रैफिक बहुत ज़्यादा. In 2007 traffic was too much. I was staying in the center of town. It would take me 45 minutes to get to my office, which was 4 kilometers away. चल के जा सकता था और उतना ही टाइम लगता था चल के जाने में वर्सेस कार में. तो मैं कहा यार इतना ट्रैफिक अच्छा नहीं है, लेट्स गो समवेयर, लेट्स गो टू बॉम्बे बिकॉज आई वांट टू स्टार्ट अ एल्गोरिथमिक ट्रेडिंग फॉर्म. तो यहाँ नवी मुंबई में आया. दैट टाइम देयर वाज नो big traffic issues and all that in Navi Mumbai. Nice Palm Beach Road was open, nobody was there. Sunsan, sort of fantastic thing. Within a year, I think, but then this is 2008, so we saw the big up and the big down, and everything happened. Algorithmic trading wasn't so meaningfully useful at that time. Market इतना down था कि किसी को मतलब nobody had any enthu to buy anything with respect to कि ये स्टॉक मार्केट तो मतलब इतना गंदा है कि तू कौन है और मतलब what background do you have to sell anything that is trading related, and on top of that algorithmic पता नहीं क्या. So I'm a computer engineer to start with. So I want to marry technology and financial markets. So we wanted to bring that together. लेकिन वो part that taught me something, it taught me a lot of things. Sometimes you have this, when you say sentiment पे ही business चलता है. You cannot create a business when the sentiment is bad. And I mean, you can create it, but you need good sentiment for a business to flourish. So that's when we discovered that something was this thing. Then I went to Delhi, Gurgaon, and I actually worked for an algo trading hedge fund there. वहां पे in 3 years the traffic got so, and we were at the edge of Gurgaon, like literally welcome to Gurgaon का बोर्ड था हमारे बिल्डिंग के पास. But Gurgaon spread so fast and so big because impossible to drive in a city like Gurgaon where there's so many the wide roads. There are also that many more cars, and within 3 years we had realized that traffic is bad and weather is bad. Mumbai is similar, and traffic is bad and weather is bad. Bangalore, at least the weather is good, so we compensate. So there are two things about people from Bangalore. First, within the first 5 minutes, they will tell you about the weather and the traffic at the same time. So that's how you know that a person is from Bangalore, because that's how they start talking. लेकिन वो part अब ज़्यादा हो गया. Weather बहुत अच्छा, but traffic. So that's how it goes. So I think in the end I made that compromise कि देखो weather अच्छा है, रह लो यहाँ पे तो धंधा बनाओ. लॉन्ग टर्म में आई थिंक वी ऑल वांट टू ट्रैवल द वर्ल्ड, वी वांट टू डू डिफरेंट थिंग्स, बट होपफुली आवर सिटीज बिकम बेटर.
आप क्यों बोलते हो कि लेट्स अवॉइड स्टेइंग इन मुंबई एंड बैंगलोर बोथ?
I think India is a little too focused on its metros, to be honest. And not that everywhere in the world wealth is concentrated in a few cities, few people, ये वो. But किसी भी जगह जाओ यहाँ पे, just even Amsterdam, Netherlands, which is a tiny little country, it's not only Amsterdam. There are a bunch of other cities where living is quite decent. The difference between living standards of place X and place Y is not so crazy. But India में the quality of life and living standards in different cities are very stark and different. The other cities have now started to come up. So I went to Nagpur, I went to Mysore, I went to Cochin. Suddenly, these places are fantastic. Nagpur has a metro. I think Cochin has a metro, but there is a bunch of much better roads, civic sense at some level, participation. So these cities have kind of become very interesting from future growth perspective. बट मैं जितना बोल रहा हूँ मैं कर नहीं रहा हूँ ना. मैं खुद भी तो बैंगलोर में ही हूँ. सो इट्स नॉट लाइक आई कैन नॉट रन माई बिजनेस फ्रॉम एनी ऑफ दिस. आई कैन, बट small things like international airport, ये so and kids schools, those are the things that I think need to catch up. These are times when India needs to spread its wings. In America, Walmart, which is obviously a famous retail conglomerate, they suddenly, I don't know when it was, a really long time back, suddenly decided that we should move our headquarters to this remote little tiny place called Bentonville in Arkansas. तो सब जो सारे एग्जीक्यूटिव्स थे उनको बोला गया कि आपको वहीं रहना है. इफ यू वांट टू बी इन द हेडक्वार्टर्स, दैट्स गोइंग टू बी द हेडक्वार्टर्स. So imagine uprooting an organization, taking its headquarters to a tiny village. वहां पे कुछ नहीं है. So they had to build literally everything in that place. The schools, the parks, the housing, all of that stuff had to kind of come in from different, all these angles, and they had to build it. यहाँ पे I think we've seen something like that happen to Jamnagar. Tata did this for Jamshedpur, but not so many of them yet. And it's not like you don't hear of um, a lot of such villages, or such smaller towns becoming really big, even though they're interesting, and even though the founders are from there originally. So I can tell you a lot of places where the founders of very successful companies are from, but wo jo giving back to that thing, that particular area has happened, it's not been quite as much.
Can you give an example of a few founders?
So I would say, so a lot of people say that they are from relatively smaller villages. I don't want to take names because it gets complicated. But if you look at places like, where can I start with? Okay, so if you look at Kerala or the South block, right? So there's a lot of people, and a lot of the southern groups are also from certain areas in the south, which are interesting for maybe some religious reasons and all that stuff. But those villages and places could have become much better. So a lot of people say, let us say they're from, say, a religious village place where there's a temple, a very famous temple, like Tirupati or something like that. But you find that a lot of of course, Tirupati is a very, very rich place. So it doesn't need like other people to help it go there. But there's smaller other such towns. Those towns don't see the unnatural benefits like a Bentonville had seen at that time. And those, the problem really is, since we're in the industry, I don't want to name people who are this thing. And it's the same with me. I also come from a tiny village in, say, I'm not anyway meaningfully rich yet, right? And I barely have just maybe one relative or two, few relatives that stay in that village right now. Almost everybody has moved out.
Which village?
But it's a place called Tirthahalli in in the Shimoga district in Karnataka. And most of the people are moved out, but there's some people, a lot of people who live there, and we know them from association and because they're relatives and relatives of relatives and so on. But I think that city has grown on its own. Although there might have been a lot of very interesting, very close by is a village that was, SM Krishna, who was the chief minister of Bangalore. His wife was from there. So when his wife was from there, they built the road fantastically from Shimoga, which was good because it could drive. It used to get ruined during the rains, and but the village has expanded almost entirely of its own. Even though there are very luminous people who are from that area and around and all that stuff. But this giving back part to the rural, this thing is also because it's difficult, because that place had relatively less connectivity. It's now that the internet has become ubiquitous and this thing. But even then, facilities wise, the certain things wise, they still have to go to bigger towns. The hospital, अगर कुछ भी अगर मतलब major कोई illness हुआ या कुछ, they have to go to Udupi at one end or Shimoga at the other end. वो एक problem है. And I think that is true for a lot of India, right? Because like for instance, many times in the North Eastern is a little bit better now, but बहुत सारी जगह ऐसे हैं जहाँ पे अल्ट्रासाउंड मशीन भी नहीं है. That's also because इंडिया में अल्ट्रासाउंड मशीन के लिए लाइसेंस लेना पड़ता है, और वो इतने ही लाइसेंसेस होते हैं, और लोग जो ऑपरेट करते हैं उनको कोई तो कुछ डिग्री या कुछ चाहिए होता है. एंड दैट because those people will not go to the villages. You at best have mobile ultrasound. मतलब कोई आपने किसी वैन में डाल दिया अल्ट्रासाउंड और आप गए किसी विलेज में, वहां पे आप एक दिन रहे, जितने लोगों का अल्ट्रासाउंड कराना था उस दिन हो गया, लेकिन उसके बाद then it will come back the next month. So ये एक problem है, but then there are ways to solve this problem. But I think right now we don't have, मतलब ये वाली जो thinking है, this does not come from the private sector. It largely comes from public enterprise. मतलब government ने बोला कि चलो mobile ultrasound करेंगे तो हो जाता है. Some private initiatives are there. It's early, but I think in the long term, India will also start doing the same thing going back. So ultrasound से क्या होता है? Why am I saying ultrasound is because ultrasound can detect a lot of things. जिसके लिए आप usually in the end you may need more tests. but the first set of detections can come from an ultrasound, and a lot of common problems can be solved. And people are not necessarily unhealthy, but some of these problems can be solved at a much earlier stage. फिर वो मतलब इतना बुरा हो जाता है कि फिर वो बड़े हॉस्पिटल में चले जाते हैं, उस टाइम पे काफी लेट हो रखा होता है, तो उसको फिर फिक्स करने के लिए मतलब दे नीड ऑपरेशंस एंड दिस एंड दैट एंड ऑल दैट. एंड फॉर अ पर्सन इन अ रूरल एरिया एन ऑपरेशन कैन बी अ 2 year or 3 year सेटबैक. Whereas अगर अर्लियर डिटेक्ट कर दिया जाए 2-3 मेडिसिन से शायद वो सॉल्व हो जाता. तो वो चीजें मतलब द कॉस्ट टू द सिस्टम इज मच हायर देन वी थिंक. पर ये मतलब ये सिस्टमिक थिंकिंग अभी तक मतलब इट्स स्लोली स्टार्टिंग टू परमिएट, एंड होपफुली लॉन्गर टर्म में दे विल बी अ लॉट मोर. सो ये वाला पार्ट जो गिविंग बैक टू योर होम टेरिटरीज एंड ऑल दैट स्टफ, आई थिंक विल जस्ट कीप इंक्रीजिंग over time.
Let me take you back to your investing journey as well. And 2000 में आपने बताया था कि आपकी सारी सेविंग्स जो 1 month सैलरी थी आपने एक टेक फंड में डाल दी थी एंड यू लॉस्ट 80% ऑफ दैट. आपका पहला ही इन्वेस्टिंग का एक्सपीरियंस थोड़ा खराब हो गया था, तो कैन यू टेक अस बैक टू दैट मोमेंट, व्हाट वेंट रॉन्ग?
Yeah, this is unfortunate. See, I was मतलब मैं कंपनी चला रहा था, मेरी खुद की कंपनी थी called Agni Software, and me and my partner, we were 4 partners at the time, and one of my partners Chirag and me were saying कि यार कुछ करना है. And Chirag is Gujarati, he's Patel, but Chirag can speak way better Kannada than me, and he's more Bangalorean than me by all standards. Okay, so that's
more Bangalorean मतलब
more Bangalore मतलब there is a Bangalore, so there is a level of Bangalorean. There is, and if you, there must be a letter of Bombaya also. जिसको जो बांद्रा के बाहर बोलता है तो है ही नहीं बम्बई, वो वाला है ना, वो ऐसा वाला. तो वो ऐसे वाले बैंगलोर वाले भी है. मल्लेश्वरम एज ऑफ बैंगलोर. इसके बाद जो है वो नहीं है. जैसे मैं रहता हूँ, जहाँ पे मैं रहता हूँ, दे विल कंसिडर इट अ विलेज. ये नहीं था बैंगलोर, ये तुमने फ्रॉड से तुमने असब कर लिया बैंगलोर का नाम. दिस इज यू नो दे शुड बी लाइक outer Tamil Nadu is where I live, whereas everything else inside of this territory they call Bangalore is Bangalore. And I was that kind of a Bangalorean earlier also, कि मैं कहता था यार ये 4 जगह है, ये बैंगलोर है और बाकी नहीं है बैंगलोर. So you know, and a lot of things like do you want sambar with idli is a sign of Bangalorean. एक जमाने में the best places that served idli would serve it only with chutney, and some of them still do only serve it with chutney. So asking for sambar is not Bangalorean. You know, so I'm just telling you that there's a level of what you define as Bangalorean which has different degrees. Bangalorean number 1 would be this person who says Koramangala कोई तो मतलब कहाँ से आ गए तुम लोग. Koramangala is now almost center of town and you know one of the most costliest places of real estate, but at some point people didn't consider it lake that was taken over for you know real estate activities, which technically is true, but at some point I'm saying that it was so bad. And then there's another layer of Bangalore who says यार मैं तो बेलंदूर में रहता हूँ, यहाँ तो मतलब यहाँ से और 5 किलोमीटर दूर भी बैंगलोर है. And then you know literally when you start getting Tamil Nadu ke signals, that is when you're not in Bangalore on your mobile phone. That's also probably true, but Bangalore stretches all the way to the you know the border of Karnataka and Tamil Nadu, which is Hosur, and after that. So that is you know the stretch of Bangalore. But sorry, where was I? On 2000. 2000 mein, so Chirag was very you know and I were very keen on doing this. कुछ तो करते हैं मार्केट में, सब कुछ ऊपर जा रहा था, and 2 साल से market was going up, and it was so crazy because our first, when we started in 1998, we got a contract from this company SAIL, 5,000 रुपए का contract. उस टाइम पे उसके शेयर्स हुआ करते थे 5 रुपए के. And I remember because we had gone and you know the employees them were saying कि क्या our company is not doing well, even our shares are 5 rupees per share. They took 1 year to pay us this 5,000 rupees.
क्या सर्विसेज दे रहे थे आप?
कुछ तो हमने बनाया था सॉफ्टवेयर उनके लिए, तो we gave them the software but they took 1 year to pay. मतलब मिला आपको 1 साल बाद whatever. तो था वो मतलब जो भी we got the money, then we said by 1 year their share had gone to 100 rupees. यार ये 5,000 रुपए में 1 लाख रुपए आ जाते हैं अगर हम उनके शेयर में इन्वेस्ट करते तो टेक्निकली वी लॉस्ट दैट मच. आई मीन वी कुड हैव, बट ये सब मतलब यू नो दिस इज लिटिल ख्याली पुलाव वाला सिचुएशन. बट We saw it. We said 20x in a year sounds great, and the market was going up, and it kept on going up. We do not appreciate how crazy that market was because it doubled in 6 months. I'll tell you about 2007, where it went up 33% in 6 months, and that's also obscene. But doubling in 6 months after the market has gone 4x or 5x in the last 2 years was almost like the last straw. कि बॉस ये तो मतलब क्या, अगर हम मार्केट में पार्टिसिपेट नहीं करें तो हम क्या हैं. And we also had a lot of customers. We had a bunch division that was doing work for companies abroad, and we had a financial accounting package we were building for India. So from these companies abroad, we were getting a lot of interest saying, "हमें और लोग चाहिए. We want you to set up a team for us and this and that and all that." So we are already doing that and consulting with them and all. मैंने कहा कि चल टेक खरीदते हैं कुछ. So ICICI I think had a tech fund, technology fund. उस टाइम पे जो NFO, they used to call them IPOs. You had to go fill a form and wait in line in some place in Cunningham Road in Bangalore. And वो लोग कब मतलब that there was no KYC and all that, just form and your bank account number was enough and you had to give a check. तो हम खड़े रहे, तो मैंने 10,000 रुपए डाले. Chirag put more money, but I had only 10,000 rupees, so I put all of it. I said कुछ करते हैं. Then 6 months later, the dot-com bubble crashed and all that. The shares, I think 6 months or a year or something later, it was worth 2 rupees. 2 rupees. I had lost 8,000 rupees. मेरे savings ही 10,000 थे. मैंने कहा यार ये मैंने क्या कर दिया? But that was ridiculous because I had done, and I had made more mistakes also during that time. I remember at that time, somebody had told me and I didn't have any money. My mother had some money. There were some shares of this company called Digital Equipment. So there was a guy there was a gym जिसके नीचे एक पानवाला था, and I used to go and chat with him in Canada, and he told me one day, and I had never talked to him about anything regarding stocks. So he said you should buy digital equipment. So I said I have digital equipment. My mother has digital equipment. You should buy more. मैं ये नहीं क्वेश्चन किया कि मेरे जिम के नीचे वाला पान वाला मेरे को क्यों कभी जिंदगी में उसने स्टॉक के बारे में बात नहीं किया. वो मेरे को एक स्पेसिफिक स्टॉक खरीदने के लिए बोल रहा है और मुझे कुछ नहीं चमका. मैंने कहा मैं भी तो टेक फंड खरीद रहा था, तो मैं भी तो था स्टॉक मार्केट में, तो मैंने कहा खरीद लेते हैं. तो 1,300 रुपए का था या कुछ, तो मैंने खरीद लिया. फिर वो 500 रुपए तक गिरा.
13,000?
1,300.
अच्छा,
1300. 1,300 to 500. Eventually, the company was acquired for 800 by Compaq or something. But of course, we bought a small. इतने सारे शेयर थे, हमने और 10 या 15 शेयर खरीदे जो भी थे. पर वो भी मेरे को मतलब I was responsible for it, right? So I'm like, okay, this is terrible. सीखना पड़ेगा इससे. Then I realized a few things that of course, this is a actual traditional paanwala story, but unfortunately it's folklore, but he was a paanwala, and it was a person that I knew, as in we used to talk. But since then he has never talked about stocks, and I had never talked about stocks to him again. So so it's that one day that you kind of realize that kuch to hai. So and I've seen that a few more times कि जब ये होता है. बट of course अब क्या है कि लोगों के पास नॉलेज और जगहों से है. तब उस टाइम पे सिर्फ न्यूज़पेपर में या फिर कभी CNBC या कुछ चला दिया टीवी पे, तो तभी आता था न्यूज़. अदरवाइज योर न्यूज़ सोर्सेज वर वेरी लिमिटेड. लेकिन आपके न्यूज़पेपर में अगर मार्केट नया हाई बनाता जाता है तो न्यूज़पेपर में फ्रंट पेज हो जाने लगता है, राइट? सो इट्स लाइक you are seeing it every day, and then therefore it becomes a topic of conversation. जब मार्केट गिरता है तो कुछ और, जैसे इंडिया ने पाकिस्तान के साथ हमला कर ये कर दिया, और या फिर क्रिकेट का कुछ हो गया, या फिर कुछ बॉलीवुड का कुछ हो गया. सो दैट बिकॉज अब मार्केट ऊपर नहीं जा रहा तो हम क्यों बात करें उसके बारे में. सो देन सडनली इट गोज आउट ऑफ. सो व्हेन इट बिकम्स द टॉपिक ऑफ कॉन्वर्सेशन, इट्स अ बुल मार्केट. And when it's not a topic of conversation, then bull market नहीं है, चलो bear हो गया, sideways हो गया, जो भी है, पर है नहीं bull market आपके पास. तो वो सीखने को मिला कि मतलब at some point you have to recognize कि these cycles will come and go.
तो आपने फिर कब डिसाइड किया कि स्टॉक मार्केट इज समथिंग दैट इज मेड फॉर मी एंड मेरे को बस इसमें ही करियर बनाना है? वो आपका फर्स्ट मनी सक्सेस कब हुआ था?
So I think, see, I had, matlab, my father used to invest in stocks, and very small amounts, but he used to invest and make me read the prices. So मैंने कहा कुछ तो है इसमें, मुझे समझ नहीं आ रहा है, and I was always a tech, my maths oriented guy and all that. So the numbers made sense, but I didn't know what was being bought and sold. After we started building this accounting package, and I was also working on a few projects for some companies that were looking for accounting kind of accounting-ish kind of solutions. We had to analyze, say, balance sheets and stuff like that. I didn't know what a balance sheet was. So उस time पे I think SEBI had just started the rule saying people have to put their balance sheets on their website. So हमने कहा website पे जाएंगे, निकालेंगे, देखते क्या है, कुछ तो था एक. So there would be this, assets and liabilities. तो मैं जाता था, ये liability में क्यों है? We have, why is share capital a liability? Then somebody would make me understand. And why would, so then I kind of understood. I mean, even now I struggle with what is debit and what is credit, simply because like you have to go back to first principles. मैंने उतना किया नहीं है, लेकिन मैंने कहा उस टाइम पे मेरे को, because I used to look at sometimes the entries that were being done and all that in the software that we used to make. I got to know roughly how these ledgers are updated, and therefore how do you create a balance sheet and stuff like that, and got some idea. But what was interesting to me was that over a period of time, you could see some absolutely crazy numbers in terms of just stocks growing. So, for instance, my father had bought what was called the Hero Honda IPO. What's little bit of shares, and within 20 years, or 2002, 2003, they were not even 20 years. It was about 18 years. They had become astronomically more valuable, more than 100x or something like that by that time. Which is crazy, because just bonuses and performance, and just the fact that us time pe jitni, how much ever you paid for that share, it had come back many times, and that just dividends alone. And now there was more growth that was happening. So I was looking at this and saying, this is what my dad did. But I don't have anything of that. But then I experimented. खरीदेंगे क्या, what will move and what does. So I bought a few stocks, but as you initially imagine कि पैसे जल्दी बनाना होता है, तो पहली बार कर रहे हो, तो you want something to give you returns in 3 months. But on the other hand, I was seeing that if you think of a long-term approach for stocks, that it does give you a fantastic return longer term. And mutual funds were more difficult to buy because you needed some paper process checks and all that stuff. Whereas I think Sher Khan and IAFL ya kuch tha, 5 paisa something, they were online, so you could give them money and then you could quickly transact online. So I could experiment with much more things with that. So I started learning this stuff. I discovered that I like it. I mean, I like the concept of looking at stocks and making money, except I couldn't get my finger around how these prices move. Then I started writing about it. I said, 2005 May I started Capital Minds. Original thing was a blog. So I started writing on it. I said, okay, just I go into this journey, I will try and understand what each of these things are. So I've written about stocks, futures, options, mutual funds, debt, name it, and I've because each time was an experiment saying, अच्छा ये है, मैंने ये किया, तो देखते क्या होता है, or this has happened, let's see what happens. So then you see a lot of stuff. So 2004 to 2007 or 2002 to 2007 is probably the biggest bull market India has seen. Even bigger than the 1998 to 2000 story, because us time pe, I mean, it was just crazy. In each of these years, the market was down at least 20%, and most of these years at least 30%. 2004 mein when the market crashed because of elections, so I think the left came into power. So market crashed, was lower circuit, 10%, ye wo. Market was down 30% from the top in 3 months, but in 3 more months it had recovered. It went down 30 and came back up. In 2005 there was a 20% fall. In 2006 Again, there was a massive bull market. There was something called Reliance Petroleum, which listed, had an IPO. I think that and a few other companies listed at that time. That after that Reliance Petroleum listing, the market fell another 30%. So Reliance Petroleum itself listed at some 100 or 96 rupees. It fell all the way back to 60 rupees, which was its IPO price. Which was one of the first instances we had ever seen of a Reliance company falling to just below its IPO price. Very few. But then it stayed at 60, and then eventually something and all happened. It got merged back into Reliance Industries itself. But we saw, you literally saw a 30% market fall at that time. 2007, nobody really knows this, but there was a day in which there was a lower circuit hit in the stock market. 2007 was a 45% year, but there was a lower circuit hit in the market on one of the days.
Why?
2008 May, 2007 October or September May. I think it was Chidambaram who came on TV or the SEBI guy, Damodaran, or whoever was there that time. He came and said, FIIs they will not be allowed to issue P notes. P notes are something called participatory notes. FIIs issue them to participate in Indian stocks without having an Indian account. मतलब आप अगर US में हो, कोई fund हो, a Morgan Stanley will set up a P note thing, set up an FII in Mauritius. They will issue P notes to some guy in the US, and on the whatever money is received, they use to invest in some stock in India. So it's a pass through. इंडिया का फंड है यार, ये US एंटिटी कौन है और ये हमें क्यों नहीं बता रहे हो आप कौन है, तो उस बंदे को डायरेक्टली लेके आओ एज एन FII या फिर वो बंद करो प्रोडक्ट, राइट. सो बिकॉज दे वर सेइंग कि प्रोमोटर खुद अपना पैसा निकाल रहा है यहाँ से और वापस डाल रहा है P नोट के जरिए, तो मतलब मैनिपुलेट कर रहा है स्टॉक मार्केट को. ऐसा था, अभी भी चलता है ऐसे सारे रूमर्स. मतलब अगर कोई बाहर पैसे लेके आ रहा है थोड़ी वापस अंदर डालेगा, यहाँ पे लेके जा रहा है ना वो, यहाँ पे तो अलग चीज से कर सकता है. बट ठीक है, तब था ये कि बाहर वाले आ रहे हैं, ये एंड ऑल, कि प्रोमोटर ही घुमा रहा है पैसे को. चलो ठीक है, वो था. लेकिन उसकी वजह से जो उन्होंने बोला कि P नोट का जो हम बैन कर रहे हैं, उसकी वजह से मार्केट गिरा 10%. लेकिन उसी दिन सेबी फेलो केम एंड सेड, देखो हम ये नहीं कह रहे हैं कि अभी बंद करो, 5 साल का टाइम है. You have 5 years to register as an FII yourself. After 5 years, we'll close the P notes. Then market recovered and came back. So it was very fast, but there was a low circuit on the index. And then 2008 was also a lower circuit on the index. 2009 was an upper circuit on the index because the left went out of power. So बाय रूल ऑफ प्रोपोर्शन आजकल ये दो चीजें अगर होती भी तो मार्केट 2% के ऊपर हिलेगी नहीं, क्योंकि फर्क ही नहीं पड़ता मार्केट को किस तरफ. इट डजंट मैटर, गुड न्यूज इज नॉट गुड न्यूज एंड बैड न्यूज इज नॉट बैड न्यूज. बट दैट टाइम अ लॉट ऑफ दीज थिंग्स यूज्ड टू हैपन. सो मार्केट वाज वेरी वोलेटाइल. I discovered somewhere that I like this volatility, and you can somewhere in the middle, I think I stumbled upon this concept that you can use tech to use statistical analysis on the markets and figure out. And I already started to read some books. One of the books was this book called Market Wizards by I forget his name now. Oh God, Jack something. I will get his name in 2 seconds. He has a series of books, the Market Wizards, New Market Wizards. So I read the New Market Wizards first. Very interesting book that talked about people who had made money from the markets, and a few of them were very interesting. There was this mention of this group called the Turtles. And the Turtles mein kya tha ki this is a zamane wala book where this guy called, I don't know if you've seen this movie called Trading Places, I think it's called. Trading Places, zamane wala book, where two people are arguing कि people who can make money in the markets are either born traders or they're not born traders, they can be taught to be traders. एक बंदा बोलता है यार you have to be born, दूसरा बंदा बोलता है कि no, you can train them. So this argument actually happened between two real people. One guy was called Ron Dennis, and I forget the other guy's name. So they actually were two big guys in the financial world in the US. Ron Dennis eventually left his trading career and became a political something support system and all that stuff. But Ron Dennis actually said, I can train traders the way they teach, they breed turtles in Singapore. So Singapore mein, they used to have turtle farms, jahan pe used to put this thing, and turtles would breed, and then they would get a lot of turtles and all that stuff. So he said, I will breed traders like turtles are bred. And the way he said that was, I will put an advertisement out there, and whoever I find with the right characteristics, I will teach them to be traders. And his funda was that you had to have only one concept. You had to be very disciplined and understanding of the rules. That means if you could follow a set of rules very well and keep your emotions out of it, you could trade. And then he taught them, he identified such people and eliminated people who couldn't follow rules over more, flimsy and all that. People who could follow rules, he taught them the system. He said, when something like this happens, you should buy, and something like this happens, you should sell. And he made them trade commodities. And those people went on to become very famous as individual traders also, as they were called the turtles. So this story, and I was like, boss, ये तो मतलब folklore है, कुछ करता क्या है? So very simple कि कुछ तो है, ऐसा है, and there's a ATR, average trading range. If the stock is above so much of it crosses over this ATR, and then at this point you should add more, and this. So there's a set of rules, and the rules were well published, were well known by this time, because they had stopped working in the US. So I said, US में शायद बंद हो गया होगा, लेकिन यहाँ पे शायद चलेगा, क्योंकि हमारा market is new. So I said, how do I test this? And interestingly at that time, while I was thinking about all of this stuff, Nithin Kamath was a sub broker of Reliance Securities or something, and he had a very interesting proposition where he would they would charge you a price per lot. So I wanted to learn futures and options as well. And by the way, a lot of these guys in this book, New Market Wizards, were trading futures and options. So I wanted to do this. The cheapest was Reliance Securities at the time, because they were charging 20 rupees per lot. And I met, and Nithin was very fascinating, was young and very driven and all that. So I met him once, and he told me, there are strategies of various sorts, and simplest thing is, if there's a moving average and you cross it, you buy, and you sell. If it crosses down, you sell. And he showed me a few of these charts, and I was like, wow, this sounds interesting. I said, how do you, he said, no, you have to build systems to test all this stuff. So I said, boss, ye mere ko aata hai. I can collect the data from places, and there were a few websites which were selling this data, 1 minute data, 1 day data, and all that. And you could download the data, and you could put them into a little database and write these little programs to test. Then I found some programs. I started testing. I said, dude, this is interesting. I could build programs that work on Indian data, because a lot of the data systems that were there were tested on US stocks, and many of them had stopped working, which is why they were openly published कि देखो ये काम नहीं कर रहा है. That's why they're published, right? So it's like काम नहीं कर रहा तभी तो दे रहा हूँ, नहीं तो नहीं दूंगा ना, मतलब नहीं तो मैं खुद ही पैसा कमाऊंगा उसमें. So, but some of them, when you married them to Indian data, you were like, okay, there is something here, something as. I mean, there was some system, but you had to go a little bit more into detail. So I studied a little more, and I found it. Of course, Zerodha went on to become really big after that. Zerodha was started in 2009. But I went in saying I want to do this algorithmic trading myself. मैं गया, कुछ बनाया. My funda at that time was, you can marry tech and this thing. But my funda was, मैं ऐसे programs बनाऊंगा, लोग मेरे से programs खरीदेंगे. Because you're thinking techie, right? You're thinking कि program ही बेचेगा ना, क्या आदमी और क्या बेच सकता है इसमें. Program बनाऊंगा तो then you will find कि तुम, or I will get all this data together, and I will give you a subscription to this data, so you can buy access to my website for, I don't know, 100 rupees a month or something like that. And the problem is, I was making this assumption that everybody was as kicked about in algorithmic trading as I was. The answer is no, it was not, because this is 2007 by this time. एंड द वे ऑल यू नीडेड टू मेक मनी, मतलब पैसे बनाने के लिए आपको जिंदा होना जरूरी था, बस आपको बस मार्केट में पैसा डालना था और समहाउ बाय द एंड ऑफ द वीक यू वर प्रॉफिटेबल। इतना पागलपना चल रहा था मार्केट में उस टाइम पे। आप कुछ भी खरीदो, कुछ भी, जो न्यू आप टीवी चैनल खोलो, जो ऐड आ रहा है उस कंपनी का आप लुकअप करो, कौन सा स्टॉक है उसको खरीदो आप, 4 दिन बाद वो ऊपर। बिकॉज दैट्स द वे द मार्केट वाज, इट वाज क्रेजी। 4000 था जुलाई 2007 में। उस टाइम पे मेरी आई वाज वर्किंग फॉर अ कंपनी एट दैट टाइम। आई हैड quit my own company. I joined a customer who said I have to set up their India office, and then we sold the India business to another company. And when that was sold, I said I want to go and I want to explore this algo trading myself. ठीक है, algo trading measure करते हैं, दिखते क्या होता है। By this time, the index was Nifty was at 4,500. Within 6 months, it was at 6,000. और हम यहाँ एल्गो ट्रेडिंग प्रोग्राम बना रहे हैं, बोल रहे हैं कि देखो डेटा से पैसे बनता है। लोग हमको देख रहे हैं कि डेटा की जरूरत ही नहीं है, बस जाओ मार्केट में कुछ भी खरीदो, सारा पैसा। तो कैसे किसी को कन्विंस करोगे कि आप हमारे प्रोग्राम्स खरीदो? हम यहाँ मुंबई शिफ्ट भी हो गए। आई हैव अ 9-month-old बेबी। I have shifted to Bombay. I have put all my stuff in my car and I said, "Chal, chalte hain. Let's see what happens." We have gone to Bombay and we have set up a house there. My partner comes, he gets a house up the road and he also sets up there. So we're sitting there. अब क्या करें? कोई मतलब बना तो रहे हैं हम लोग वेबसाइट, लेकिन कौन देगा हमें? And you know, it was 2008 January. उसके बाद मार्केट गिरना स्टार्ट हुआ। By this time we had decided कि देखो, जो हम कर रहे हैं ना, इससे किसी और को देने में किसी को फायदा नहीं है। लेट्स पुट आवर ओन मनी एंड डेमोन्स्ट्रेट कि देखो जो हमने सिस्टम बनाया वो इसमें एक्चुअली पैसा बनता है। तो इट इज डिफिकल्ट टू गो शॉर्ट इन इंडिया एक्सेप्ट इफ यू डू इंट्राडे। तो फ्यूचर्स में था, बट फ्यूचर्स के लिए हमारे पास उतने पैसे नहीं थे। फ्यूचर्स वाज आल्सो 2 lakhs per lot at that time, and it was difficult for me to I didn't want to go do a lot of leverage, so we had a few lakhs each. So we said, okay, let's put it and see. So we put our own money down and we made money all the way till I think July, August, you know. So because we were not even questioning. मार्केट बोल ये एल्गोरिथम बोल रहा है शॉर्ट जाओ, तो हम जाते थे शॉर्ट। एंड ऑफ द डे वी स्क्वायर ऑफ, and if it says go long, we will go long. So some days we were long, some days we were short, some days we were a little bit of both. We didn't care. हमने कहा कि जो सिस्टम बोलेगा हम वही करेंगे, and we did that. And it was very interesting because during this time we ended up with some 20% gains for the year. And come September, company in Bombay was like, तुमने अपना पैसा लगाया है अपने सिस्टम के ऊपर, हाँ, तो आप हमें कॉन्ट्रैक्ट नोट भेजो। सो वी सेंड देम ऑल द कॉन्ट्रैक्ट नोट्स। कहा तो सही है, ठीक है, if you're interested, we'll buy you and give you positions as fund managers, and you can we will raise funds for you. You can run this on larger amounts of money. But ठीक है, that sounds very interesting. Unfortunately, that time Lehman came. Lehman went bust. This company, which was in Bombay, has a parent in the US. The parent is also bust. So the guy, the CEO of the Bangalore company said, I don't think I can purchase you because I don't even know if I have a job. That's a different this thing. So I think we'll have to, but I'll give you a letter and I still have that. He said, this transaction is not going through, not because something is wrong with capital. I mean, not capital. It's called money yoga at the time. Money yoga, but because we have other issues. So we were going to do that.
This was because of the Bernie Madoff scandal?
Bernie Madoff came in December.
Okay.
Which was unfortunate for another reason, because now we had a track record. We were supposed to be bought out. We didn't get bought out, right? Because this company went. So we said, let's go generate a track record anyways and try and raise funds ourselves. अब किसी और कंपनी ने हमको फंड मैनेजर बनाया, हम खुद ही ना क्यों फंड बना ले? So we went to a few people, we started talking, and we said, अच्छा track record है. By November and December, we started to approach people in the US saying इंडिया में तो है नहीं, मतलब इंडिया में क्या, बैंगलोर, I mean Bombay was looking like a ghost place at that time because nobody even wanted to celebrate Diwali. And sadly, at that time also, there was the terrorist attack in 2008. We were here, actually, I was in BT 3 hours before it happened.
Oh my God.
So that day we strangely decided to leave a little bit early. We would have left at 3:34. We just decided to leave at 3 that day. And of course, this thing happened at 8. So most likely I would have missed it anyways. But by the time I reached home and, kind of my son was young, so he just hung out. And then I saw on TV that all this stuff is happening. I was like, I was there 4 hours ago. But it was crazy at that time. Of course, a lot of things were happening and life was a little challenging because we didn't even know whether we could go back. And the market was closed, I think, for one day. Or maybe, I don't know. I don't remember exactly. But there was, we didn't go back to the trading places, and we started to try and sell our thing to the US guys. In the US, anyway, the mahal was bad. Then Bernie Madoff happened there, and Satyam happened here. Satyam happened a few weeks later. But here's the interesting thing. At that time, they were looking at our statement saying, "यार, Bernie Madoff के पास भी तो था statement. वो 50 साल तक उसने फ्रॉड किया, तुम कहाँ से आए हो बच्चे फ्रॉम इंडिया, हाउ एम आई गोइंग टू बिलीव योर स्टेटमेंट्स, तुम बर्नी मेडोफ ने हमें मतलब हमारा फ्रॉड किया तो तुम कौन होते हो एंड ऑल दैट." सो नो चांस. एंड इंडिया में सत्यम हैड फॉल्सिफाइड बैंक स्टेटमेंट्स, सो अगेन नोबडी वाज गोइंग टू बिलीव एनीथिंग. सो आई सेड, बॉस, मतलब दिस इज गेम ओवर. I had started the business with Kaushik at the time, and we had put a 16-month to 18-month time frame कि December 2008 तक अगर हम को traction नहीं मिलेगा, then we will shut down the business. So December 31st, we actually shut it down. We in my first business, I realized that when the business is not going anywhere, I need to have a personal stop loss कि business नहीं चल रहा है. So since then I've followed it. This is my fourth venture, and every time I've done something, I put targets and I said, if things don't happen by this time, we will shut it down. And I've followed it for the most part. I think it's given me some feeling of comfort. But then that's when I said, okay, that's the end of that story. Sorry, I'm monopolizing so much of this. I should leave it.
This is very interesting. Just that about Capital Minds. तो अभी at present आप कितना total AUM manage कर रहे हो पैसा लोगों का, and what has been the percentage CAGR roughly?
So we have two strategies in the PMS. There's a PMS and there's a mutual fund. The mutual fund is new. We're managing today about 130 crores in the mutual fund, which is a flexi cap mutual fund. So we started in August 4th. So it's relatively small. The PMS is about 7 odd years old. Manage about 2,000 crores there, and 2 stock strategies, a couple of mutual fund strategies, and so on. CAGR, so I was an investor personally until I had to move to the mutual fund, at which point I cannot own direct stocks anymore. So I have a track record of the entire mutual fund, but my money is still in the PMS. Though the PMS is invested in mutual funds for me, different other mutual funds, but the idea is that I cannot invest in direct stocks. So my own personal CAGR, including the fact that I had some debt at some point, is over 18%. The stock strategies themselves have returned more than about 20% per year since 2019. So fairly decent track record in my own account. Our customers, the CAGR has varied. In some cases, it's very low because of timing. Some cases it's very high because they've been able to last through cycles. And the return on some of the strategies is decent over the long term. It's nearly double the index in terms of overall this thing over 5 or 6 years. The returns of another strategy is only good in the 4 or 5 year time frame. 1, 2, 3 year time frame is not so great because the cycle has kind of turned for that strategy. But by and large, I think over the long term, if you take a combination of our strategies, we've returned upwards. We've seen again, past returns are not signs of future success, but there's been 16-18% CAGR over the last few years. Even if you include that many of our customers had debt as part of their strategy. वो कहते थे कि डेट में डालेंगे पैसा, धीरे धीरे से equity में डालेंगे. So the debt returns would drag you down a little bit, but that's fine. In including that, it's been 16-17.
So let's try to break down your investing thesis and the framework that you have. तो अगर आप कैपिटल माइंड्स की स्टोरी के थ्रू अगर आप एक केस स्टडी ले सकते हो कि व्हाट हैज बीन योर बेस्ट इन्वेस्टमेंट, उसने कितना रिटर्न दिया परसेंटेज वाइज कितने स्पैन ऑफ टाइम में, एंड देन आई वांट टू अंडरस्टैंड कि आपका थीसिस क्या था, आप कंपनीज इन्वेस्ट करने के पहले क्या देखते हो.
हाँ, so this is interesting. So the capital mind started with one thesis of long-term multi-cap, and then we introduced the quantitative theory called momentum. Now, momentum में क्या था कि I'll tell you about that first. Now, momentum is basically a quantitative strategy which simply says अगर स्टॉक ऊपर जा रहा है तो ऊपर और जाएगा. So जैसे आप पहले लोग कहते थे कि जब स्टॉक नीचे गिरा हुआ हो तब आप उसको लो. ये मोमेंटम कहता है कि जब स्टॉक सबसे ऊपर है, अपने 52 वीक हाई, आज उसका 52 वीक हाई है अगर, तो एक्चुअली दैट इज द इंटरेस्टिंग कैंडिडेट टू बाय. तो ऐसे स्टॉक्स खरीदो जो ऊपर जा रहे हैं और स्ट्रांगली ऊपर जा रहे हैं, जिसमें स्ट्रांगली अपवर्ड मोमेंटम हो. ये हमने बैक टेस्ट करा हुआ था और हम चला भी रहे थे एज अ रिसर्च कंपनी, बिकॉज वी वर अ रिसर्च कंपनी टू स्टार्ट विद कैपिटल माइंड, जिसमें हम पोर्टफोलियोज लोगों को बताते थे कि आप ऐसे पोर्टफोलियोज लो. तो ये इस टाइम फ्रेम में हमें लगा, हमने टेस्ट भी किया कि 2017 में जैसे और 2015-14 में मोमेंटम वर्कड वेरी वेल. फिर 2016 में उतना नहीं चला, फिर 17 में चला, 2018 में उतना नहीं चला. हमें लग रहा था कि देखो मार्केट के साइकिल्स हैं, लेकिन जब ऊपर जाता है इतना अच्छा रिटर्न देता है, और जब नीचे गिरता है तो उसका मतलब आप उसको कंट्रोल कर सकते हो जितना रिस्क है.
ये सेम स्ट्रेटजी जो आप 2020 में 50% कैश पे गए थे एंड देन 61% रिटर्न दिया अगले साल.
वही वाला था. तो उसमें 2020 में क्या था कि जब एल्गोरिथम चलता है, कहता है ये हम आपके कैंडिडेट्स हैं. अब अगर आपने 20 कैंडिडेट रखने हैं और उसमें आपके सिर्फ 4 क्वालिफाई हो रहे हैं, तो आपका 80% कैश ही होगा. तो कैश बढ़ता जा रहा था हमारे 2020 जैन और फेब में, और जिस तरह से कैश बढ़ता जा रहा था हमें लग रहा था कि यार मतलब क्या ये स्ट्रैटेजी मतलब हैज इट ओवरडन इटसेल्फ, कि अगर यहाँ से कोई रिटर्न ही नहीं आएगा. बाय मार्च इट बिकेम ऑब्वियस कि मार्केट और गिर रहा है और गिरते जाएगा. एंड वी वर लकीली इन कैश द टाइम बिकॉज ऑफ द एल्गोरिथम. एंड हमारा जो मार्च और अप्रैल के जो रिटर्न्स थे वो ऑलमोस्ट फ्लैट थे, क्योंकि हमारे पास जो स्टॉक्स थे उसमें से एक गोल्ड ETF था. So we had bought it there, and that was because that was showing some momentum, and because of that, March was fantastic. Now April में क्या हुआ कि market recovered quite a bit. We didn't recover because we were in cash. Even May में the first half we didn't recover much because जैसे the momentum looks at history. अगर आप 52 week high नहीं बना रहे हो तो we will not buy. So the stocks takes a while to come back to the 52 week high. What happened was a bunch of pharma stocks started to come back. देखो हम क्वेश्चन ही पूछते हैं क्यों आ रहा है, हमें ये लग रहा था देखो दिख रहा है इसको खरीदा जाए. And some of these stocks, so in momentum for instance Laurus Labs and all that stuff, they gave a ridiculous return. And because we were buying on the basis of momentum, we couldn't tell you that this was because pharma अच्छा करेगा ये वो. I don't think the logic of momentum is not the fundamentals. The logic of momentum is the price.
Catch the trend.
And after you caught it is when you start to explain it. Acha, because of this, now we can see that pharma is doing well or something else is doing well and something. So we saw the wave of that. We saw the wave of defense. HAL appeared in the momentum portfolio in 2023. And 2024 is when it kind of moved up a lot. PFC and REC जो 5 साल तक इतना मतलब वैल्यू ट्रैप्स थे, 5 या 10 साल तक, जो उनका P8 हुआ करता था 2 हो गया था. अब जब 2 से 4 हुआ तो मोमेंटम पोर्टफोलियो में आया. तो आई वाज ऑलमोस्ट लाइक आई वाज टेलिंग Anup, and Anup was managing the portfolio. I said, Anup, yeah, this is a waste of a stock. क्या है? It's like, no, but don't question. We don't know. And true to that, that stock, PFC itself and REC, both of them went up 400% in a year. Again, it was ridiculous. So the upside returns of some of these moves can be quite ridiculous. So it is true for almost everything, and you cannot explain. आप लोग मुझे अभी भी बोलते हैं कि यार ये वाला बड़ा एक्सपेंसिव है. मैंने कहा इससे कोई फायदा नहीं है सोच के कि ये एक्सपेंसिव है. If you are looking at the short term, the expensive can become even more expensive, right? आपको ये चाहिए कि you will not buy it, that's a different thing. But to say that it's expensive and therefore it will fall, that is a definitively bad thing. But what is expensive can get more expensive. And even today, I can tell you a lot of stocks that 2019 में जो लोग बोल रहे थे expensive है, आज भी उससे 2 गुना और expensive हैं, और आज अपने हाई से 30% नीचे हैं. तो जिस बंदे ने उन स्टॉक को ट्रैक किया वो कह रहा होगा कि यार ये तो 30% नीचे है अपने टॉप से, लेकिन मैं कहता हूँ 2019 से कंपेयर करो, अभी भी उसका पी डबल है.
जैसे कोई एग्जांपल
You can look at most of these electric stock. ABB, for instance. ABB was 32 times earnings then. Now it is some, I don't know, 80 times earnings or something like that. And it is 4x the market cap of what it was in 2019. So that is one example, but there are lots. I mean, take all the, the Unilevers and this and that. And all of them have higher Ps than they were in 2018. But that P expansion does not mean that their prices have done a lot for them. Their earnings have not grown so much, and they are at a higher P now than they were at that time. But it still means that they are more expensive. मतलब आप और महंगे हो गए हो. जब लोगों ने बोला कि आप महंगे हो, आप उससे और महंगे हो गए. इट्स ऑलमोस्ट लाइक सेइंग गोल्ड महंगा हो गया, गोल्ड और महंगा हो रहा है. इसका मतलब ये नहीं कि अब जब गोल्ड महंगा होता है ना, लोग खरीदते हैं, बेचते नहीं है. तो इट डजंट मीन कि गोल्ड महंगा हो गया तो बेचो. लाइक और महंगा होने से पहले और खरीदो. दैट इज द थॉट प्रोसेस, राइट? सो बट some of these things are not related to valuation. Some of them are primarily related to sentiment. And sentiment हमने जिस तरह डिस्कवर किया है, sentiment is about has played a significant role. मतलब आप समझते हो कि लॉन्ग टर्म में ना स्टॉक सिर्फ अर्निंग्स की वजह से ऊपर जाते हैं. लेट्स टेक अ 10-year पीरियड, किसी भी 10 साल की पीरियड आप ले लो. जिन स्टॉक्स ने उस 10 पीरियड में सबसे बेस्ट रिटर्न दिया, वो स्टॉक्स क्या वही हैं जिसके अर्निंग्स ग्रोथ सबसे बेस्ट है इनकम इन दिस थिंग? द आंसर इज यूजुअली नो. अर्निंग्स ग्रोथ होता है 20-25%, लेकिन जो 10x वाला रिटर्न आता है जो भी है, वो इसलिए आता है कि या 100x रिटर्न जो भी है, मार्केट ने उनको 12-15 वाली पी दी पहले, अब 30-40 की पी दे रही है. तो जिस तरह से उनका सेंटिमेंट ऊपर गया, दैट इज रिस्पॉन्सिबल फॉर 50-60-70% ऑफ द ग्रोथ in price, whereas only 30% of the growth is come from the earnings itself. मतलब आप प्रॉफिट के ग्रोथ से आपने आपकी जो मार्केट कैप की ग्रोथ है, जो कि प्राइस की ग्रोथ, स्टॉक के प्राइस की ग्रोथ है, उसमें उसका कंट्रीब्यूशन सिर्फ 1/3 था, बाकी 2/3 वाज बिकॉज ऑफ सेंटिमेंट. तो ये सेंटिमेंट आई थिंक देखना बड़ा इंटरेस्टिंग है. एंड प्राइस स्ट्रैटेजीज लाइक मोमेंटम इज, बट देन वी हैव अनदर स्ट्रैटेजी कॉल्ड सर्ज इंडिया, जो स्टार्ट हुआ था मल्टी कैप से. वहां पे हमने एक्चुअली we took a call that stocks that are focused on India will do very well. In ABB in 2020 was demerging its power grid um, business to Hitachi worldwide. तो उन्होंने क्या किया, उन्होंने डीलिस्ट किया, अपने मतलब डीमर्ज किया. ABB became ABB and something called ABB Power India, which eventually became Hitachi Power India. तो जब ABB Power India लिस्ट हुआ तो स्टॉक का प्राइस था 900 रुपये. So I looked at this and I said, yaar, you know what, this company is very interesting. It's in high voltage DC. There's a bunch of other things that it does, which is going to benefit the Indian grids and the Indian growth in electricity. So it's very basic analysis. I said, this is probably worth a lot more than this. Isme we should start buying. And we did that for a while. The stock and I remember it had reached 1,800 and I was still buying. And my dealer was like, how long will you buy this stock? I said, well, it seems to be worth at least 4,500 rupees in 5 years. So I think by 2025, it should be 4,500 rupees. It's 2025. Today it's 20,000 rupees. So 920,000 is a ride. Of course, we didn't ride all of it. We sold most of it, all of it, in fact, at 12 or 13,000 rupees. But that was a ridiculously good run. I At 12,000, I thought I've reached the point where I'm done. I think it's done. But it went from 12 to 20 again. So right, it's like, you lost a little bit more. But that's okay, because you won't get the top and you won't find the bottom. But that thought process was two things. First, it was a good stock, in the sense it is a solid company which has Bangalore mein metro ke niche, you will see that ABB Power India has done part of the work on it. So you'll see that they have been involved in that part of the business. They're setting up high voltage DC transmission lines and the equipment for it and so on in other areas and all that. And this is going to be a high growth area. ये ठीक है, ये सब एक चीज है, बट इससे मेरे हिसाब से 4,500 का प्राइस था, लेकिन प्राइस एक्चुअली हुआ 20,000. लॉट ऑफ दैट इज एक्सपेंशन इन सेंटिमेंट. एंड वो जो सेंटिमेंट आप कभी प्रेडिक्ट नहीं कर सकते हो, आपको सिर्फ फॉलो करना पड़ेगा. सो वन थिंग आई रियलाइज इज दैट समटाइम्स द ट्रेंड्स कैन कम एंड दे विल बी लॉन्गर एंड बिगर देन यू एवर थिंक. ऐसे बहुत सारे ऐसे कंपनीज हैं अच्छी कंपनीज हैं. देखो, अच्छा जो इन रेट्रोस्पेक्ट अच्छी कंपनी वही होती है जिसमें आपके स्टॉक के पैसे बनते हैं. लोग कभी ऐसे नहीं कहते कि ये अच्छी कंपनी, इसमें मैंने 1 रुपया नहीं बनाया. राइट, वो अच्छी कंपनी होगी, पर अगर पैसा नहीं बनाया तो आपके लिए अच्छी नहीं है वो. तो इन दी एंड आवर strategy was not to just find अच्छी companies from a operational governance or profit making perspective, but also find companies who can get great sentiment going forward. हमने this thing, we have a company which is well, I can name it, we still have it, it's called Kane's India, जो PMS में है. तो जिसमें I think the initial idea that I got from it was, first of all, it was local. Karnataka wali company thi. They had a place in Nanjangud and they were doing something around semiconductors. I said, yaar, matlab ye hai. Because my feeling, and that time it had already come, 2022 हो चुका था, यूक्रेन हो चुका था. हमने कहा कि देखो, over dependence on any country is going to be a problem. So we said India's biggest import is semiconductors. Third biggest import, crude gold, semiconductors. And whether semiconductors in a form of mobile phones, but we're always importing full-time products. We said, why don't we make chips and we don't make anything? And these guys were doing at that time PCB stuff, and not chips, but upper level stuff. They would import chips and all that stuff, but then make PCBs for them and this thing. I think there was another interesting play in Dixon, but Dixon was more electrical than electronics. So they were doing, washing machines and air conditioners and TVs and stuff like that. But assembling that, so they were doing a different place. So we had both of these plays. Dixon did really well. We got out of it a little bit early, unfortunately, but Kane's kind of retained that thing. Kane's is up nearly 10x in 2 years, 2023 to now. So these are very interesting stories, because अब 10x में क्या होता है ना, आप एक स्टॉक में 50% हार जाओ, ठीक है, आपका 100 के 50 हो गए, लेकिन आपका एक स्टॉक में 1,000 रुपये बन गया 100 का. तो क्या होता है कि इट कैन ऑफसेट अ लॉट ऑफ लॉसेस. आपने 4 कंपनीज में 50% का हिट ले लिया अगर, तो आपके गए मतलब 200 रुपये, 100 रुपये हर स्टॉक में डाला, 4 कंपनीज में 50% आपका लॉस हुआ, 200 रुपये आपका लॉस हो गया. लेकिन आपने एक में 900 रुपये बनाया, 100 का 1,000 हो गया, राइट. जो 900 रुपये बनाया वो it can eat up so many of those losses and let you go. So you have to let your winners run. कि जो 100 का 200 हो गया, आपको ये नहीं सोचना चाहिए यार 100 का 200 हो गया, चल निकलते हैं यहाँ से. ये नहीं, वो आपका अगर थीसिस सही है और ट्रेंड ऊपर है, देन यू शुड स्टे विद इट, यू शुड राइड. आपको पता भी नहीं चलेगा कितना ऊपर जा रहा. अब ये हो सकता है कि केन्स कल, इनफैक्ट मार्च में केन्स वाज डाउन 50%. And we sat together, we had discussion and we said, okay, क्या करना चाहिए. March, this was we hadn't received mutual fund license till then, so we had this thing. And when we discussed this, the idea was, this is where we should be going, and this is the field that is still attractive. And by this time, Kane had evolved into a semiconductor manufacturer also at some point, and there were plans of growing things. And we said, okay, this sounds, even though it sounds very expensive now, futures earnings are likely going to bring it this thing. But those views will keep changing. If you tell me after 6 months the view will be different, after 6 months the view will be different. But we found that sometimes you get these crazy winners, and you should ride the crazy winners. So the momentum thought process should apply even in a growth mindset or something like that. कि जो ऊपर जा रहा है उसको क्वेश्चन ज्यादा मत करो कि क्यों ऊपर जा रहा है. Have a strategy to maybe limit its position. मतलब ये नहीं होना चाहिए कि गेंद आपके 40% हो जाए portfolio, right? It's a little scary that way, but you have to limit your position sizing. But you don't have to say कि मैं सब कुछ, I'll get out of everything. I've learned this lesson many times. I think I'll keep forgetting this lesson every time. But sometimes, the greatest stocks, the greatest returns cannot be explained by just fundamentals. There's a little bit of sentiment in it.
थोड़ा दोनों पे डीप डाइव करते हैं सर. तो सर्च इंडिया वाली स्ट्रैटेजी पे भी एंड मोमेंटम स्ट्रैटेजी में भी. तो मोमेंटम में यू सेड कि यू हैव टू कैच द ट्रेंड. नाउ आई वांट टू अंडरस्टैंड, कैन यू गिव एन एग्जांपल ऑफ, लेट्स से कि आपने 3-4 स्टॉक्स, मतलब कैसे ट्रेंड आइडेंटिफाई करते हो, क्या नंबर्स है कि ओके इतने परसेंट ऊपर जा रहा है इतने टाइम से, तो इस पे जाना है. तो वो एक बार एक्सप्लेन कर सकते हो डिटेल में?
हाँ, मोमेंटम आपको मतलब बहुत सारी डेफिनेशंस मिलेंगे. सिंपल सा डेफिनेशन है कि देखो, लेट मी गिव यू द सिंपलेस्ट डेफिनेशन. जो स्टॉक 52 वीक हाई बना रहा है वो है मोमेंटम स्टॉक.
ओके.
लेकिन आप ये भी कह सकते हो, देखो 52 वीक हाई आज बना है, लेकिन कल अगर और ऊपर गया तो और एक 52 वीक हाई हो जाएगा कल. और सो अगर मैं पिछले एक महीने से 52 वीक हाई बनाए जा रहा हूँ, तो क्या ये अच्छा स्टॉक है वर्सेस के दैट स्टॉक विच इज जस्ट मेड अ न्यू 52 वीक हाई, है ना? वो भी सही क्वेश्चन है. तो मैं कहता हूँ ठीक है, इसमें वेटिंग सिस्टम होना चाहिए ना, कि आप कौन से स्टॉक को कितना खरीदोगे. क्या आप उस स्टॉक को उतना ही वेटेज दोगे जो 10 बार कंटिन्यूसली 52 वीक हाई बनाया जा रहा है, वर्सेस जिसने नया बनाया. मे बी यू शुड हैव अ वेटिंग सिस्टम कि जो नया 52 वीक हाई है उसको ज्यादा पोजीशन साइज दिया जाए, और जो कंटिन्यूस बनाया जा रहा है शायद उसको थोड़ा सा कम, क्योंकि वो ऑलरेडी काफी, मतलब थिंकिंग आई एम सेइंग. देन यू कैन टेस्ट दिस कि देखो यही चीज अगर मैं 2 साल पहले करता तो मैं कौन सी स्टॉक खरीदता, कितनी देर रखता, और अगर इतनी देर रखता तो कितना पैसा बनाता. एंड देयरफॉर आई कैन से कि देखो, मैं जैसे अगर 52 वीक्स हाई एंट्री की क्राइटेरिया है और उसके नंबर ऑफ डेज बिफोर टू द लास्ट 52 वीक हाई इज ऑल्सो एन इनपुट. इट्स अ वेइंग क्राइटेरिया, वेटेज का क्राइटेरिया है. वो 2 हो गए. अब एग्जिट क्राइटेरिया भी चाहिए. अब एग्जिट क्राइटेरिया 2-3 चीजें हो सकती हैं. या तो आप गिर गए हो, अपने 52 वीक हाई से 20% नीचे आ गए हो, देन यू शुड गेट आउट. दैट्स अ सिंपल वे. अनदर वन इज कि मेरे पास और ऐसी पोजीशंस हैं जो अभी 52 वीक हाई बना रही है, लेकिन आपने नहीं बनाया 15-20 दिनों से, या जो भी है, या 2 महीने से. तो ये दोनों हो गए एग्जिट क्राइटेरिया. आपने उसको लगा दिया. नाउ दीज आर ऑब्जेक्टिव क्राइटेरिया कि आप जो भी लगाओ एग्जिट क्राइटेरिया, कि आप या तो आप 20% गिरो, या फिर मुझे कोई और ऐसा स्टॉक मिले जो बना रहा है 52 वीक हाई, लेकिन आपने नया 52 वीक हाई पिछले 2 महीनों में नहीं बनाया. ये दोनों कंडीशन आप कोड में लिख सकते हो. इफ A equals this thing और if B equals, आप कर सकते हो. आप एंट्री भी कोड में लिख सकते हो कि एंट्री इज इक्वल टू न्यू 52 वीक हाई, वेटेज इक्वल टू नंबर ऑफ डेज टू 52 वीक हाई बाय सम फैक्टर. आपने ये बना लिया पोर्टफोलियो, तो ये बोलेगा कि देखो ये है आज का पोर्टफोलियो, अगर आज आपने खरीदना होगा तो. लेकिन अगर आप इसी चीज को, आपके पास अगर लंबी टाइम सीरीज है, सारी इंडिया की जो स्टॉक्स हैं उसके सारे प्राइसेस जो हैं, यू हैव इट फॉर 20 इयर्स, आई कैन से 2011 में चलाता तो क्या पोर्टफोलियो बनता. वो पोर्टफोलियो अगर क्योंकि मैं रोज कर रहा हूँ, चलो महीने में एक बार करता हूँ, महीने में एक बार अगर मैं करता हूँ फर्स्ट ऑफ द मंथ, इफ आई डू, then I will be selling some stocks in the first of the month, buying some new stocks. तो वो हो गया मेरा, it is called a rebalance frequency. तो मैंने 52 week वाली हाई ली, then I rebalanced it once a month and I tested it for the last 15 years. ये सिंपल सा फंडा है, आपको पता चलेगा कि ये क्या था, आपने आपका पैसा कैसे बना। यूजुअली लोग क्या कहते हैं कि जैसे आपने बोला टेल मी योर बेस्ट स्टॉक, वो बेस्ट स्टॉक के चक्कर में वो भूल जाते हैं कि पोर्टफोलियो है, आपको पैसे बैंक अकाउंट में बनाने हैं। आपको ये नहीं करना है कि मैंने ये खरीदा या वो खरीदा। ये नहीं कि आप आप कभी मार्केट में अगर इफ यू गो टू बाय थिंग्स, you cannot say that I had great apples, so I will highlight only the apples, whereas I got bad tomatoes and bad onions and all that. So end mein you have to see ki boss, did I get value for the whole amount I paid, right? So if I put 100 rupees and my 100 rupees grow to 200, but I have one stock that went 10x, तो लोग उस 10x के बारे में बात करते हैं। ये नहीं कहते कि 100 का 200 हुआ है। 100 के 200 में उस स्टॉक का जो 10x है वो नहीं है, आपको मिला 2x, तो आपको बात करनी चाहिए 2x की। सो दैट इज द थियोरी हियर ऑल्सो, वेयर यू आर सेइंग दैट मोमेंटम, शायद कुछ स्टॉक्स बहुत अच्छा रिटर्न दें, यू डोंट केयर, आपको एंड में नेट पैसा कितना लगा और कितना वापस आया, दैट इज द मोर इम्पोर्टेंट थिंग। और उसमें दो चीजें और हैं। अब जब जैसे स्टॉक ऊपर जाते हैं वैसे नीचे भी आते हैं, सो यू विल ऑब्वियसली हर्ट एंड यू विल हर्ट मोर। अब लोग कहते हैं कि देखो 10 या 20%, इससे ज्यादा मैं पेन नहीं ले सकता, या 30%, चलो। सो यू हैव टू कीप दैट इन माइंड कि देखो आपका पेन अगर 30% है तो शायद बहुत ज्यादा है, एंड द स्ट्रैटेजी शुड नॉट have so much pain that you have to take 30, 40, 50% pain, right? So you can also say that the strategy is getting great returns, but it has too much downside pain. That's why we added this criteria of अच्छा minimum इतना होना चाहिए momentum, नहीं तो cash में चले जाओ, so that you hurt a little bit less in the extreme event of a deep fall. But when we tested all of this and built a momentum strategy, it was based on rules like this, not exactly this. Rules are a little more proprietary, लेकिन बहुत सारी ऐसी criteria जिसमें entry criteria होंगे, फिर weighing criteria होगा, फिर exit criteria होगा, और एक rebalance frequency होगा। वो rebalance frequency 1 महीना था, एक जमाने में 15 दिन भी था, because markets were moving very very fast, और कुछ टाइम में the frequency was less than that also. That is the momentum thing, and we run it now. We have the algorithm. हमने कोड बनाया जिसको कभी भी आप रन करके बोल सकते हो कि देखो टेस्टिंग में ये अभी डेटा निकल के ये आ रहा है, और अगर आप में चेंज करना है तो ये चेंजेस करने हैं। So you can run that at the end of every month, and you can see whether there are any changes. Sometimes there are very few changes, sometimes there are lots of changes.
तो सर एक केस स्टडी लेते हैं, तो मोमेंटम स्ट्रेटजी के थ्रू अभी लाइक व्हाट हैज बीन द लेटेस्ट, और मे बी पिछले 1-2 साल में कौन से स्टॉक आपके रडार में आया था और इन्वेस्टमेंट आपने किया था?
हाँ, so all these stocks that I mentioned, PFC and all of that stuff have come in the last few years.
ओके, ये मोमेंटम स्ट्रेटजी से
Moment is
तो इसको कोई भी एक कंपनी उठाते हैं, उसको केस स्टडी के थ्रू आप एक्सप्लेन कर सकते हो कि ओके ये जैसे PFC, या तो आपने HEL बताया, REC बताया, तो कोई भी एक स्टॉक लेके आप बता सकते हो कि ओके ये 52 वीक हाई हो गया था, फिर उसके बाद क्या हुआ?
लाइक you can plot the chart of PFC over a long period. In fact, वो it didn't do anything for 10 years. And then it broke out of this range. And then it started. It's not like it's very expensive today. आज भी 10p पे ही है. It's not like it's ridiculously expensive. But these stocks have gone up. At some point made that 52-week high. But and then the trend lasted for another year and a half. Of course, many of them have lost that magic.
तो आपने 52 वीक हाई आया PFC का, आपने आइडेंटिफाई किया।
हाँ, बट वो 52 वीक, I mean, I was giving you an example of 52 वीक हाई being a criteria. But हमारे criteria थोड़े से और डिटेल हैं. But let's take 52 वीक हाई. Let's say 52 वीक हाई आया और हमने PFC को लिया उस टाइम पे. Then you hold. Then you say कि तुम्हारा exit criteria क्या है, कि stock 20% गिरे. So if it has fallen 20%, then only I'll exit. So luckily at that time it didn't fall for a while. It gave you that crazy return, so you kept holding it. And same with, if you look at Laurus Labs between 2020 and 2021, I think there was a period of another 400-500% return उस टाइम पे आया था। तो वो वाला जो एक बार पहली बार 52 वीक हाई हिट किया and then continuously goes on, that is one of the criteria of momentum. लेकिन वो एक स्टॉक है, क्योंकि एक स्टॉक से नहीं आपकी पोर्टफोलियो बनती, क्योंकि आपने अगर 5% पोर्टफोलियो का वेट इसको दिया, तो यू मे हैव गिवन सम वेटेज ऑफ 3% टू समबडी एंड 5% टू समबडी एल्स. अब ये भी है कि जो आपने इनिशियल वेट दिया वो एक चीज थी, लेकिन अगले महीने क्योंकि स्टॉक प्राइसेस चेंज होते रहते हैं, जो 5% वाला स्टॉक है अब 7% हो गया,
राइट,
है ना, या फिर 5% वाला 2% हो गया, गिर गया काफी, वॉट एवर. सो यू हैव टू बैलेंस दिस डायनामिक वेट्स ऑल्सो कि अच्छा वेट अभी कितना है.
तो आप कितना करते हो कि इससे ज्यादा नहीं होना चाहिए?
सो यूजुअली 10% से ज्यादा हम लोग
Okay.
जाने नहीं देते यूजुअली, बट इन सम एक्सट्रीम केसेस इट विल गो बियॉन्ड 10 ऑल्सो. बट कोई ऊपर वाला लिमिट नहीं है. हमने ये नहीं कहा कि 10% से ज्यादा होना चाहिए. वो म्यूचुअल फंड में रूल होता है कि 10% से ज्यादा नहीं होना चाहिए, पर पीएमएस में नहीं है.
Okay.
म्यूचुअल फंड में तो नेचुरली है, 9% के बाद हमें वार्निंग आ जाएगा और फिर 10% पे विल हैव टू, वी डेफिनेटली शुड नॉट हैव एनी मोर पोजीशंस मोर देन 10%. सो दैट इज अ डिफरेंट थिंग, बट पीएमएस डज नॉट हैव दोज रिस्ट्रिक्शंस, राइट. सो लेकिन वो उसके अलावा आर प्रॉब्लम इज कि 10% से ज्यादा अगर हो गया तो हमारा डिपेंडेंस ज्यादा बढ़ जाता है उस रिटर्न पे, उस स्टॉक पे. सो दैट इज अनदर फीचर कि आपको डाइवर्सिफाई करना ही पड़ेगा. और ये भी फियर है ना कि कभी जो मोमेंटम वाली स्टॉक से गिरती भी बहुत ज्यादा है, जब गिरती हैं तो आपका इम्पैक्ट कितना होगा, आप पे जो इम्पैक्ट होगा, अगर वो स्टॉक 10% आपके पोर्टफोलियो का, देन इट फॉल्स 30%, आपका 3% नेगेटिव हो गया ना उसकी वजह से.
राइट.
सो यू वांट टू लिमिट दैट आल्सो एंड द एल्गोरिथम शुड काइंड ऑफ टेक केयर ऑफ इट, क्योंकि यूजुअली हो जाता है, क्योंकि आपके पास इतने सारे पोजीशंस होते हैं जिसमें बन जाता है वो.
तो पीएफसी का एग्जाम्पल कंटिन्यू करते हैं. तो अभी जैसे आपने लिया, ओके लेट्स अज्यूम 52 वीक हाई आ गया, 20% अगर डाउन गया तो आप सेल कर दोगे, अगर नहीं गया तो होल्ड करोगे. अभी लेट्स अज्यूम ये बढ़ता गया, तो देन अभी डिसाइड कैसे करोगे कब एग्जिट करना है एंड उसके क्या क्राइटेरिया?
सेम, कीप ऑन एट 20%, सबसे हाई लेवल से नीचे नहीं जाना चाहिए.
अच्छा,
तो अगर मैंने 100 रुपए पे खरीदा
समझ गया.
और 400 रुपए पे चला गया,
हाँ.
तो 400 रुपए पे माई 20% इज 320.
करेक्ट.
तो मैं 100 से प्रॉफिट ही बना रहा हूँ,
हाँ.
लेकिन मेरा फंडा है ये 400 रुपए सबसे बड़ा हाई है. इट्स
समझ
द
गया.
लास्ट ट्रेलिंग हाई. सो आई शुड नॉट फॉल 20% फ्रॉम द लास्ट हाई. ये हो सकता है कि ऊपर चला जाए और चलता जाए, बट एट सम पॉइंट इट विल फॉल बिलो दैट 20%. और ये भी हो सकता है कि चलो 400 तक चला गया और फिर 400 पे ही रहा, 380 370, 3-4 महीने हो गए, लेकिन मेरे और सारे बहुत सारे स्टॉक आ गए जो नए नए 50 वीक हाई कर रहे हैं. हम कह रहे हैं यार ये नहीं कर रहा ना 2 महीना, तो इसको निकालो, अब 380 पे इसको निकालो और जो दूसरा नया हाई वाला है उसको डालो. तो ये दोनों क्राइटेरिया हैं. अगर वो दोनों क्राइटेरिया साथ में मिला लोगे, देन यू से कि रखो.
समझ गया. और 52 वीक हाई के अलावा और 2-3 चीजें क्या होगी कि आप असेस करोगे?
देयर आर मेनी वेज. और जो लिटरेचर है वो कहता है कि आप रेट ऑफ चेंज ले सकते हो. रेट ऑफ चेंज इज बेसिकली द लास्ट ईयर 100 रुपए था, अभी 200 रुपए है, सो इट्स 100% इंक्रीज. इसको आप रैंक कर सकते हो हर स्टॉक को, लास्ट ईयर से आज तक कितना चेंज हुआ है. दैट इज दिस थिंग, इट्स कॉल्ड अ क्रॉस सेक्शनल रैंकिंग. क्रॉस सेक्शनल आप रैंक करो और उसमें से टॉप ले लो, लेकिन प्योर तो नहीं ले सकते, क्योंकि आप कह रहे हो कि यार एक दिन 100 रुपए था, लेकिन एक दिन में 100 रुपए से 200 रुपए तक चला गया, एंड देन इट वाज फ्लैट. देयर इज नॉट दैट मच मोमेंटम, सो यू हैव टू ट्वीक द रूल्स टू से कुछ और करेंगे ये वो. काफी जो रूल्स जो बनते हैं वो, और एक चीज है, कुछ इंडिकेटर्स हैं, जैसे स्टॉक इज अबव 200-day moving average, 5-day moving average, 50-day moving average, 100-day. सो सबके ऊपर होना चाहिए स्टॉक, और ये स्टॉक ये भी एक के ऊपर एक होना चाहिए. सो 5 शुड बी हाईएस्ट, then 100, then you know the things like that. So you can say that is your criteria, and when that happens, that is my entry point. And maybe that is the, so you can test all of this because आपके पास डेटा है अगर, तो ये सारी जो मैं बोल रहा हूँ आप सब कुछ टेस्ट कर सकते हो. तो मोमेंटम इज लाइक सेइंग कि मिठाई है, पर कौन सी मिठाई है, रसगुल्ला है या रसमलाई है, वो अलग चीज है, राइट. सो आप मोमेंटम किस तरह से डिफाइन करते हो उसको, आप उससे आपके मतलब आपका जो टेस्ट है वो जो, और द जायका इज डिफरेंट. सो इन द सेंस ऑफ आपने मोमेंटम अगर रेट ऑफ चेंज चुना वो चीज एक चीज है, आपने मूविंग एवरेजेस वाली चुनी और एक चीज है. तो आप ऑल फॉर्म्स ऑफ मोमेंटम, देयर आर थिंग्स, इतना लिटरेचर है इसके ऊपर कि 19 आई थिंक 89 या 90 में पहला पेपर आया था इसके बारे में, एंड there was a person who had got a Nobel Prize also on this thing around a concept of efficient markets. कि markets are efficient. उसमें कोई ऐसा तरीका नहीं है कि आप कोई भी ऐसा रूल बनाओ कि आप मार्केट से बेटर रिटर्न लेके आ सकते हो, ऐसा कुछ है नहीं. Now, when they saw the results, the same people who had designed said efficient markets and all that stuff, when they saw momentum, they said, this is an anomaly. ऐसा नहीं हो सकता है. According to the rules, you cannot have a rule that beats the market, but these seem to be rules that over a long period have beaten the markets, and maybe this is an anomaly. So they said this is an anomaly in momentum, and it seems to be that there is something there. And momentum has worked very well in different countries, because data तो data है. आप इसको आलू के भाव से भी चेक कर सकते हो, या फिर किसी और, मतलब इट कैन बी इन एनी मार्केट वेयर देयर इज अ प्राइस. So you can test in US markets from the 1920s or 1900s also to now. You can check in Japan, you can check in Indonesia, Germany, everything. You can test. So momentum has worked in different time frames. Different types of momentum has worked in different time frames in different markets. So momentum एज अ थॉट प्रोसेस हैज वर्कड इन द पास्ट. ये नहीं कि आगे जाके हमेशा वर्क करेगा, या फिर आपने जिस तरह से डिफाइन किया है क्या वो मोमेंटम हमेशा से वर्क करेगा. बट उसमें ही तो काम है कि मतलब आपको देखना पड़ेगा क्या मोमेंटम कहाँ से शिफ्ट हुआ है कहाँ तक, और अगर आपने एक तरह से डिफाइन किया, शायद किसी और डेफिनेशन में इट मे बी वर्किंग बेटर.
तो ऑन एन एवरेज कितने स्टॉक्स होल्ड करने चाहिए, लाइक एक टाइम फ्रेम में, अगर मतलब जैसे 10 स्टॉक्स, 20 स्टॉक्स, व्हाट इज अ गुड नंबर?
10 बहुत कम है. आपको डाइवर्सिफिकेशन नहीं मिलती है. सो between 15 and 25 is nice for an individual.
Okay.
अगर आप इंस्टीट्यूशन हो तो आप 40-50 भी रख सकते हो. स्पेशली अगर आप जाते हो स्मॉल कैप्स में. स्मॉल कैप्स में क्या होता है कि आपके पास नहीं होती लिक्विडिटी उतनी ज़्यादा, तो आपको इतना कॉन्सेंट्रेट भी नहीं करना चाहिए एक पोजीशन पे. तो स्मॉल कैप्स में आपको ज़्यादा पोजीशंस रखने पड़ेंगे. लार्ज कैप्स में आप 20-25-30 रख सकते हो. एंड अगेन डिपेंड्स ऑन द फंड साइज. अगर आपके पास 50,000 करोड़ है तो शायद आपकी स्ट्रैटेजी ही अलग होगी कि मैं किसी और I have to do a different thing when I do this, or I have to use a different approach for small caps versus large caps versus something else. So अभी हम लोग देख रहे हैं कि कुछ कुछ फंड्स ऐसे हैं जो 50,000 करोड़ से ज्यादा है. वहां पे भी अगर आप 100 पोजीशन भी ले लो, 100 पोजीशन अगर आप ले भी लेते हो, तो हर एक पोजीशन का स्कोर नीड्स 500 करोड़. अगर मैं कहता हूँ यार मैं 500 करोड़ का खरीदूंगा और फिर चलो 3 महीने बाद 500 करोड़ बेचूंगा, खरीदने बेचने में मेरे को एक महीना लग जाएगा, because there's not that much liquidity in that stock. So your strategy also needs to change along with the AUM you manage. So हम 5,000, 2,000, 3,000 पे आई थिंक एक स्ट्रैटेजी हो सकती है, बट लेकिन अगर आप 50,000 हो गए तो शायद स्ट्रैटेजी अलग होगी. लेकिन यूजली लोगों के पास इतने पैसे नहीं होते. मैं मतलब I don't know so many people who are trying to play the markets for 50,000 crores. So usually ऐसे strategies बहुत मतलब ऐसे funds भी बहुत कम होते हैं. For most of us हमारा जो corpus कम होता है उसमें हम 15, 25, 50 ऐसे वाले stocks ले सकते हैं. आप बहुत ज़्यादा भी लोगे ना, आप individually लोगे तो बहुत fight है, because आपको track करने पड़ेंगे 50 वाले position. Then you need some software to track them, and it becomes painful for you.
What's the average holding period of a stock in your strategies?
It's interesting. We have seen 60 days on average, but usually because of the rules, losers पहले निकल जाते हैं. So average holding time for losers are less, about 30 days, 35 days, 40 days. But average holding time for winners can be as much as 2 years. In PFC, REC, I think 1.5 years was the time frame that we held. So some of these extreme winners you hold for a longer time, but your average holding period, I mean, you should imagine that 400% turnover is normal for a momentum strategy. मतलब 4 बार आपका portfolio change होगा. So average holding period will be obviously 2 to 3 months. For the most
400% आप बोल रहे हो कि
turnover होगा.
turnover, अच्छा.
So basically your turnover ratio is officially the real term is something else, but it means literally how many times I can take 100 rupees, I'll churn it 4 times.
तो बेसिकली हाँ, मतलब एक साल में अगर 4 बार चर्न हो रहा है तो ऑन एन एवरेज आप बोल रहे हो कि 3-3 महीने में वो चेंज हो रहा है. तो
180 days
हाँ,
is
मतलब सेल किया
buy किया. Usually I mean the factors will change because uptrending market में उतना change नहीं होता है. Downtrending market में changes are more often.
तो मोमेंटम स्ट्रेटजी समझ गया सर, बहुत अच्छे से आपने समझाया. थैंक यू सो मच फॉर द डिटेल ब्रेकडाउन. नेक्स्ट आपकी है सर्ज इंडिया. तो इसमें अभी आपने मतलब जैसे एक एग्जांपल दिया आपने कंपनी का, तो इसमें क्या आपका थीसिस है कि कौन से क्या मेट्रिक्स है, तो क्या कंपनीज आइडेंटिफाई कर रहे हो आप?
So let me just give you the quick summary.
हाँ,
The idea of Surge India came in 2022, जिसमें रूल क्या हुआ था कि रशिया अटैक्ड यूक्रेन और अमेरिका ने क्या किया, अमेरिका ने बोला कि आपके जो सारे डॉलर हैं, रशिया के जो सारे डॉलर्स हैं, वो हम जब्त कर लेंगे. वी विल नॉट अलाउ यू टू यूज दोज डॉलर्स. एंड यूरोप ने बोला कि यूरो आप यूज नहीं कर सकते. तो मैंने कहा यार, इंडिया को अगर ऐसे कर दिया जाए, तो अगर इंडिया और पाकिस्तान का वॉर हो गया और इन लोगों ने बोला कि आप नहीं यूज कर सकते आपके डॉलर या जो भी है, या फिर चाइना ने हमें एक्सपोर्ट करना बंद कर दिया क्योंकि वो हमारे साथ वॉर पे है, तो हमारा क्या होगा? तो देयर हैज टू बी अ मूव टू रिप्लेस द इम्पोर्ट्स विथ डोमेस्टिक मैन्युफैक्चरिंग. मतलब जो चीज़ आप इम्पोर्ट कर रहे हो, आप इसको मैन्युफैक्चर करो. इसमें मैं थोड़ा सा रिसर्च किया, मैंने कहा यार, हम मैन्युफैक्चर तो कुछ भी नहीं करते हैं. मतलब करते हैं कुछ चीज़ें, जैसे हम कपड़े भी बनाते हैं, तो बेस्ट कपड़े एक्सपोर्ट हो जाते हैं. तो अगर इंडियंस खरीदना भी चाहते हैं, मतलब पैसे भी देना चाहते हैं कपड़ों के, देन वी गेट इम्पोर्टेड. लॉट ऑफ आवर स्टफ विच वी बाय इन इंडिया इज मेड इन बांग्लादेश, and then India also exporting clothes, right? So that is also one thing. But the second one is very interesting. Alongside this, India का जो age group है, our average age, median age is going up. So डिस्पोजेबल इनकम इंक्रीज हो रही है, एज ग्रुप इंक्रीज हो रहा है, तो लोग स्टेबिलिटी की तरफ आ रहे हैं और अपना कंजम्पशन, उनके कंजम्पशन पैटर्न्स चेंज हो रहे हैं. तो कंजम्पशन पैटर्न्स में क्या होगा कि पहले क्या था कि सिर्फ आप बेसिक्स पे का ध्यान दो, रोटी कपड़ा मकान, सेल फोन, जो भी है वो बेसिक्स. लेकिन एट सम लेवल यू हैव गॉन बियॉन्ड द बेसिक्स. तो जो आदमी सिर्फ चावल और दाल दे यूज्ड टू ईट, now he's asking for more dal because they want protein. So it's a little bit of a premiumization, but it's because people have slightly more money, and whether it's dal or eggs or whatever it is, everything is going to one level higher. So the demand for the one level higher product is increasing. Domestic consumption is increasing. So domestic consumption is a very interesting theme. Domestic manufacturing, which is import substitution, is another theme. The third thing is energy independence. The energy independence is basically कि हम crude से ही सब कुछ, crude में सब कुछ import करते हैं. There will be EV, there will be electric, there will be hydrogen, there will be other sources, solar, other things like that. So there can be a lot of work. On Power India was one of those themes where I said, okay, when we start moving to electric generation through solar and stuff like that, there will be a lot more of demand for what Power India manufactures. But that was the other theme for any energy independence. The layer that adds on to this is financial infrastructure. Financial infrastructure में already UPI काफी पॉपुलर होने लग गया था. इतना पॉपुलर था कि मैंने कहा अब UPI एक प्लेटफॉर्म है, इसके ऊपर जो चीजें बनेंगी we will not even be able to imagine. And which is true, because अब IPOs भी UPI से होती हैं, आपका लोन बैंक देता भी UPI से, लेता भी UPI से, तो सब कुछ मतलब UPI से हो रहा है. मैंने कहा कि जो इस तरह से जो UPI is one layer, स्टॉक मार्केट इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर वाज अनदर लेयर. फुल्ली डिजिटल हो गया था. आप पूरा अपना अकाउंट ऑनलाइन आधार के थ्रू ये कर सकते हो. आपको किसी सो द होल फाइनेंशियल थीम, इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर थीम मीन्स people who are either brokers, exchanges, demat, depositories, all of them will make money as more people enter the market. So we said financial infrastructure will do well. If you take all of this and then put something around government finances, we said government finances are already looking good in 2022. We said government finances अब थोड़े से better हो गए. Now there can be a push towards two parts, defense and infrastructure in general. So defense was for me, a very key import substitution theme, because India is the second largest importer of arms in the world. तो हमने ये कहा कि देखो, India will have to start making its own weapons. So we started buying defense companies of that sort. So we put these themes together and said, let's find companies that will benefit from these themes. So we built a portfolio, whether it was banks at some level or depositories and things like Kane's, which is a import substitution company, or Power India, which is which I already had at the time because it was 2022, 2020 mein main start kiya tha, but it fit the theme, so we continue to build it. That portfolio has done fairly well. It's done a little bit around double of the Nifty in 5 years. But of course, the portfolio is only about, 3 years ago is when we reshaped the portfolio and called it Surge India. And we said, इसमें एक चीज नहीं होगी उतनी ज्यादा कि exports में उतना हमें कोई focus नहीं करना है. It has to be Surge India from the perspective of both Indian production and Indian consumption from that sense. So we're looking at more of the stocks that make sense. So for instance, a bank will only benefit from India. उसके बाहर वाले से कोई ज्यादा फर्क नहीं पड़ेगा. So we chose a bank that has reasonably sized balance sheets and all that stuff, and we bought it. Kane's is mostly an Indian company. It will eventually probably export. That's not a this thing. But I think one of the biggest things that will happen for it will be Indian production and possibly Indian consumption as well. The same thing will apply to a lot of other stocks.
बट सर आपको इसमें लगता है कि डेल्टा जो है इन टर्म्स ऑफ स्टॉक गेन्स, मतलब जैसे मोमेंटम में आपको वो 10x का मिल सकता है, इसमें आपको लगता है कि वो इतना बड़ा डेल्टा मिल सकता है ये स्टॉक्स में इन्वेस्ट करके?
अब मिल सकता है का मुझे पता नहीं है, बट जितना मिला है मैं बता सकता हूँ कि देयर आर like Kane's and Power India both are 10x plus stocks.
Okay.
And that was true of the portfolio. And I don't think I care too much about कि मुझे 4x मिले या 10x मिले. मैं प्रेडिक्ट नहीं कर सकता कि मुझे इस स्टॉक में 10x मिलेगा. All I know is that देखो पोर्टफोलियो बना है, some of them will do well. I'll bet more when the stock does well. But क्या इसमें ताकत है बनाने की, मतलब 10%? आई वुड से एनी स्टॉक है. सो आप बता भी नहीं सकते हो कि नेक्स्ट 10x कौन सा होने वाला है. वेरी फ्यू पीपल कैन प्रेडिक्ट. अगर आप किसी को बेस्ट स्टॉक पिकर बोलो 10x कौन सा होने वाला है, वो बोलता है देखिए यार मैं 10% का बता सकता हूँ एट बेस्ट, मे बी 10-20%, बट 10x किसको पता है यार. मतलब 5 साल आगे और 2 साल आगे 10x कौन बनेगा, आई डोंट नो. वेरी फ्यू पीपल कैन प्रेडिक्ट. एंड you know what happens is I can predict you 10 stocks, one of them will become 10x. मैं उसका ढिंडोरा पीटूंगा ना कि मैंने बोला था कि ये ऐसे भी लोग करते हैं. सो दैट इज नॉट रियली राइट आई थिंक. बट चलो ठीक है, वो भी आई हैव डन दिस राइट नाउ. आई हैव सेड अबाउट 2 stocks of mine that have done 10x, but my portfolio has not done 10x. No, my portfolio has done maybe 5x in 4 or 5 years, but not, or 4x in that point, but it's not as much as 10x as a whole, as a portfolio. But over a period of time, some of these stocks, if you hold, I think they will do it. And sometimes these stocks tend to start off expensive. Power India was extremely expensive when it started off, to be honest, because कोई earnings नहीं थी. हमको तो पता भी नहीं था क्या earnings है, क्योंकि उन्होंने बैलेंस शीट जो रिलीज किया वो 3-4 महीने बाद किया. तो हमें ये भी नहीं पता था कि कितने एसेट्स हैं इस कंपनी में और क्या जा रहा है और कितना बना रहा है, वो कुछ नहीं पता था. हम we went in blind a little bit, and then we built the conviction after that, right? So you would normally, I don't think you'll not get returns, but sometimes some of these stocks just become undiscovered, and sometimes they stay undiscovered. In fact, one of my biggest problems when we started off multi-cap, I took on a bunch of stocks, which I said was a great portfolio. And we bought a chunk of these stocks. And 2018, the market fell. I got spooked and I walked away. Some of those stocks have given 15-20x returns since then. But I got spooked and went into larger caps. These were really relatively small caps. So companies like KEI, for instance, we bought them in small 3 digits, and now they are in reasonable 4-digit numbers in terms of size. Even I think good companies that were relatively small. There was a company called Cheque Paper. There is a company called Cheque Paper, and at that time I remember they had done an acquisition in Andhra Pradesh. So I said, this is interesting. Why don't we, I think the paper cycle will be interesting, and these guys are going to be big, and we used to import a lot of paper. We still do. So I said one part of it will go away once the domestic production starts coming in and all that. And the Telangana government had given a huge amount of benefit, kya kehte hain, subsidies to this plant which they had bought. I forget what its name was. It was in a place called Kagaz Nagar. The Kagaz Nagar was Kagaz because of this paper plant, and this was being acquired by Cheque. मैं कहा यार ऐसे होगा ये होगा. You won't believe it, that stock was at a PE of maybe 10. I said 10 ही PE रहेगा. 80 पे stock. It's earning 8 rupees EPS. And I said, okay, this company will earn 25 rupees EPS. In 2 years, it had gone to 25 rupees EPS, 2.5 or 3 years. Stock price was 200, it was 100 rupees. तो तुम 80 rupees से 100 rupees 2 साल में चले गए तो क्या ही कर लिया तुमने, it's not a big deal at all. I was like, यार 3 गुना गया है earnings. He has made earnings go up 3x. And the price is still the same. I said, boss, khatam karo. Now it's at 400 or 500 rupees. So it's like the gains actually happened a lot later. And they switched because the sentiment of the stock changed. So if it had, my funda was that if it had just got a 10p, then the price would have been 250 rupees. But I didn't have the patience to wait for the sentiment to change. So I learned a little bit of lessons over there. So that sometimes you have to track sentiment and understand position sizing just for that. So some of these stocks were like that, where you got in at a very low level and you hope that this big return will come. Some of these stocks were expensive right from the beginning, but it's okay because the growth kind of was ridiculous. Like growth of 500%, 600% can change any stock's future. If that happens. So I think that was one thought. But like you said, sometimes you will not get the best, but sometimes you have to have contrary sentiments also. जब हमने डिफेंस के बारे में बात किया था तब लोग उतना नहीं बात कर रहे थे डिफेंस के बारे में. It was not considered a big deal. It became a big deal in 6 or 8 months. And what the interesting thing is that we saw momentum buying defense companies. So we were like, how come defense companies are going up? And we're just formulating this thesis, right? कि ये मतलब होने वाला है, this is the thought process and all that. And before we were able to, start to buy a lot of defense, some of them had already started to run up. And we bought a few, and we bought, I think we bought Mazgaon Dock at some 800 rupees a share or 600 rupees, 700 rupees a share or something. It has given a 1:1 bonus or split or something like that. And it went to some 8,000 back to 4,000 and then to 6,000 something. It's some crazy kind of a move that you've seen. And that too for a government company. In my wildest dreams, I cannot imagine a government company like HAL, Mazgaon Dock, all the others going up like this. Things had changed. And so people are willing to pay high PE even for a government company, assuming that the growth is ahead of it. So for Mazgaon Dock, for instance, one order was like 4x of its turnover for the year. That was the scale difference. Because defense, if you take a 250,000 crore capex in a few years, and only 5 or 10,000 crore of that was going to Indian companies, most of it was going to foreign companies for that, for whatever stretch. Maybe a little bit more, but I'm giving you the numbers in overall. But imagine where this switches into 80% going to Indian companies and 20% going to foreign companies. So Indian companies का मतलब चांदी है. And who is the Indian company that's going to benefit the most? Defense वाले लोग, private companies को कम अहमियत देंगे compared to public companies. So first they will give public sector, then they will give private sector. So the correct strategy is पहले public sector वाले खरीदो और जब वो ऊपर चले जाए फिर आप जाके private sector वाले खरीदो. That is how the thought process was. And sometimes the less complicated your thought process, the more it is easy for people to say, यार ये तो इतना simple है, इसमें पैसे कैसे बनेंगे? उसी में sometimes is the best investment return. Because you have to keep your thesis simple and then go down the wire key. How do you make the money out of this?
So जो म्यूचुअल फंड है तो इसमें भी आपका सिमिलर स्ट्रेटजी आई अज्यूम, लाइक मोमेंटम स्ट्रेटजी, सर्ज इंडिया स्ट्रेटजी जो आपने एक्सप्लेन किया है, तो म्यूचुअल फंड जो आपने लॉन्च किया है इसमें भी वो है या इसमें कुछ अलग
स्ट्रेटजी? So not yet on
strategy है?
Surge India. We have a momentum-ish. So we said, okay, momentum does well, but there are periods in which momentum doesn't do well. So mutual fund ने क्या किया? We said there are three problems. When market is uptrending, momentum is the best thing because it makes the most amount of money. ठीक है, बट दो और चीजें हो सकती हैं. मार्केट कुछ नहीं कर सकता है, या फिर साइडवेज हो सकता है, या फिर मार्केट बहुत ही डाउन ट्रेंड में हो सकता है. तो हम क्या ऐसे नहीं कर सकते कि डिटेक्ट करें ब्रॉडली कि मार्केट किस रिजीम में है. क्या मार्केट ऊपर जाने वाली रिजीम में, सो इट्स एन अप ट्रेंड, स्ट्रॉन्ग अप ट्रेंड, साइडवेज और स्ट्रॉन्ग डाउन ट्रेंड. अगर हम देखें कि स्ट्रॉन्ग अप ट्रेंड है, देन वी शुड बी इन मोमेंटम. अगर हम देखें कि साइडवेज है, we should be not so much in momentum but some other factors which we can decide based on what is doing, what the backtest is showing at that time. अगर डाउन ट्रेंड है तो हम हेज करना चाहिए. तो ये चीज हमने भी बैकटेस्ट करी कि क्या गोइंग बैक इज दिस थिंग. सो मोमेंटम इज द बेस्ट. सो वी जनरली गिव अप अ लिटिल बिट ऑफ मोमेंटम्स फैंटास्टिक रिटर्न्स फॉर डूइंग दिस चेंज. And usually these regime changes happen once in 2 or 3 years. 2 साल अप ट्रेंड हुआ, 2 साल साइडवेज हुआ, 1 साल या 1.5 साल डाउन ट्रेंड हुआ. आजकल डाउन ट्रेंड्स की जो टाइमिंग्स हैं बहुत ही कम है. सो 2008 में एक बड़ा डाउन ट्रेंड था, 2013 में एक था और 2020 में था. बस ये तीनों बड़े डाउन ट्रेंड्स है. बाकी उतने बिग नहीं है क्योंकि 20-30% मार्केट को नॉर्मली ही घूमना है. सो by and large, the market spends time in uptrend or sideways. Right now, we are in a sideways trend, so we will be in a different strategy. Even there's an uptrend, we will change into more focus towards momentum so that it switches more appropriately to the regime that is currently running. So it's a slightly different. So it's there in our presentation कि हमने ऐसे किया हुआ है, and we've kind of built the portfolio also similarly.
और सेक्टर वाइज स्प्लिट क्या होगा म्यूचुअल फंड के स्ट्रेटजीज में, कौन से सेक्टर
हमारा पक्का स्प्लिट नहीं है. वी डोंट से कि देखो इतना होना चाहिए इस सेक्टर में इतना. वी आर सेइंग कि देखो लिक्विडिटी अगर होगी, मतलब वी नीड द स्टॉक्स टू ट्रेड रीजनेबल अमाउंट पर दिस थिंग. सो वी हैव लिक्विडिटी फिल्टर, we have a certain other set of filters, governance, ये वो. So that layer of this thing is there. Thought process is there. However, we don't say कि एक sector को should not move. But of course, we do try to make sure that because there's a human eye on top of this. Anup will say, देखो, I can't buy all stocks that are pharma because वो तो फायदा क्या हुआ? Even though all of them may be showing momentum, there will be a natural limitation कि इस sector में इससे ज़्यादा मत करो. But by and large, we have not seen too much concentration on too many one sector. Maybe 20-25% on a sector, but that is normal. आप किसी भी mutual fund में देखेंगे तो about 25 to 30% will be banking. Financials minimum. So you do have sector concentration in most mutual funds. We're okay with a certain number, but we're not okay beyond a certain number.
तो कौन से sectors में डाला होगा? अभी क्या होगा current split?
अभी it'll be different, right now and all that stuff. Right now there's a good representation from all sectors, whether it is financials, industrials, pharma, infrastructure. There are stocks of all of these types and IT as well. So strangely, some IT stocks have also come into this thing because IT is not doing as well, but some of these stocks have done reasonably well. And there is a good, because it's part of the algorithm, we have used a number of other factors also to find good stocks.
You've been very vocal against the entire FIRE movement जो होता है, financial independence, retire early. तो आपका क्या व्यू पॉइंट है? लाइक ये FIRE नंबर overrated है, बहुत लोगों को ध्यान नहीं देना चाहिए, क्या पॉइंट है?
So I think the part of the FIRE part of the FIRE movement is the problem. मतलब जितना भी मैं देख रहा था कि देखो सबको रिटायर करना है जल्दी, 50 साल का हो गया हूँ. I don't think I can stop working. I can temporarily take a break, बट उससे ज्यादा क्या, मतलब एंड में आप कुछ तो करोगे अपने दिमाग को, मतलब ये रखने के लिए. बट मोर इम्पोर्टेंटली आई थिंक रिटायरिंग इज नॉट शुड नॉट बी द ओनली थॉट प्रोसेस. आपका फाइनेंशियल इंडिपेंडेंस होना बहुत जरूरी है. आपका ये भी होना चाहिए कि आप पैसों के साथ करोगे क्या, इतना पैसा बना के. क्योंकि पैसा बनाना कोई गोल नहीं है. तो लोग कहते हैं मुझे 4 करोड़ बनाए, यार नहीं, तो तुमको 4 करोड़ नहीं बनाना है. तुमको 4 करोड़ किस लिए चाहिए बताओ? नहीं मुझे 4 करोड़ इसलिए चाहिए क्योंकि ना मैं फिर उसको बैंक में डालूंगा, उसमें मेरे साल के 30 लाख आएंगे, मैं 30 लाख को मैं लेके मैं ये सब करूँगा. मैंने कहा जो सब करोगे बताओ. तो देन ही सेड ओके नहीं नहीं मैं ना मुझे एक फॉरेन वाला ट्रिप चाहिए, ये वाला ट्रिप चाहिए, वो ट्रिप। मैं कहा ठीक है, फिर एक काम करो, मेजर योरसेल्फ इन नंबर ऑफ फॉरेन ट्रिप्स और वट एवर यू वांट टू डू। बिकॉज अब क्या होगा कि जो पैसे आएंगे 4 करोड़ और उसके 30 लाख आएंगे, अब यू विल बी वर्थ 4.3 करोड़। तुम बोलोगे मैं अगर इसमें खर्च कर दूंगा तो मेरे 4.3 कम हो जाएंगे। तुमने अपने आप को मेजर किया पैसों के साथ। अब तुमने अपने आप को ये नहीं मेजर किया कि मैंने 4 फॉरेन ट्रिप लिए इसलिए मैं थोड़ा बेटर इंसान हूँ, वट या जो भी आई फील मच बेटर अबाउट माई सेल्फ, बट यू आर फोकस्ड ऑन द 4 करोड़ नंबर, then you will be focused on the 4.3 crore number, then the 4.6. You will never do these things. So you should focus on the things you can do with the money. But we call it win at life. So winning at life, then to say कि मैंने इतने पैसे बनाए वगैरह. So this financial independence part is exciting to me because people should find ways to make themselves less dependent. जिस तरह से मैं कह रहा था इंडिया को less depend होना चाहिए कि दूसरों के ऊपर, आई थिंक लोगों को भी less depend होना चाहिए दूसरों, मतलब योर एम्प्लॉयर या फिर योर बच्चे विल टेक केयर ऑफ, नोबडी इज बच्चास गोइंग टू टेक केयर ऑफ देम। आई मीन सम बच्चास विल टेक केयर ऑफ देम, बट वो मतलब जरूरी है। बट आपको तो ऐसा नहीं करना चाहिए कि मेरे बच्चे को मैं वो बोझ डाल दूं कि वो मुझे भी ये करे और फिर ही इज मैरिड एंड मे बी हिज इन-लॉज आल्सो ही हैज टू टेक केयर ऑफ, इट्स टू मच. So you want to make sure that your kids don't have to take care of you. You are going to make sure that you're not depending on a bank, you're not depending on a employer. Then how will you get independent? By having as much money कि इतना पैसा होना कि उसमें से जो इंटरेस्ट निकले उसका आपका घर चल जाए, वो लेवल 1 है. फिर आपके बच्चों की एजुकेशन और जो भी है वो निकल जाए, वो दूसरा लेवल है. और तीसरा लेवल ये है कि आपको मतलब उतने पैसे चाहिए कि आपके बच्चों की एजुकेशन का ये हो जाए और फिर अपने हॉलीडेज और खर्चा, एंड उसके बाद जो आप पैसा बनाते हो ना वो खर्चे के लिए. द आइडिया इज दैट, द आइडिया ऑफ प्रॉब्लम विद फायर इज वो इतना पैसों के ऊपर कॉन्सेंट्रेट हो जाता है कि लोग कहते हैं मैगी खा लेंगे. तो ठीक है थोड़ी देर खा लो, मतलब हमने भी खाया हो, उसमें क्या है, कोई प्रॉब्लम नहीं है. लेकिन आप रोज खाओगे फिर तो मतलब यार मेरे बच्चे मेरे को बोल देंगे कि आप घर से जाओ अगर मैं उनको रोज मैगी. एट सम पॉइंट यू नीड हेल्दियर फूड ऑल्सो, बट ऑल्सो it's just a ways to kind of keep saying that I will do that. It's not and I don't find it attractive to say कि मैंने बचा बचा के somehow मैं फ्री हो गया. अब आप फ्री हो गए लेकिन आपने इतना बचाया कि आपका जो माइंडसेट है वो चेंज नहीं होता है. देन यू फील मिजरेबल. मैंने इतने पैसे खर्च कर 1,500 रुपए की कॉफी. मतलब आप फॉरेन में जाओगे तो मतलब उतने ट्रांसलेट करोगे तो उतना क्या आएगा, 1,500 की कॉफी मैंने पी. मैं कैसे पी सकता था, मैं 1,500 में 400 कॉफी पी लेता था पहले, जो भी वो था एक टाइम पे. तो वो जो ये फायर का जो है वो मेंटल है. At some point it becomes this thought process. So you have to kind of marry this and you say कि बॉस इसको थोड़ा सा मतलब अट्रैक्टिव रखो, अपनी जिंदगी को अट्रैक्टिव रखो, मेक इट, बिकॉज इट्स द जर्नी नॉट द डेस्टिनेशन. ये फायर हमेशा डेस्टिनेशन पे रहता है कि मैं उस दिन रिटायर होऊंगा, उस दिन मतलब जी के जाओगे ना वहां तक, वो ये भी तो याद करोगे मैं 30 से 38 पहुंचा कैसे. एट सम पॉइंट यू हैव टू गो बैक एंड रिमेंबर दिस. इसे मैं बोलता हूँ और मैं वहाँ पे मतलब रात को 12 बजे भी काम कर रहा होता हूँ, ये भी है. बट एट सम लेवल आई थिंक peace is not found in retiring early. Peace is found in the independence and the happiness that you get by being independent. फिर आप, I say this, retiring is about working because you want to, not because you have to. So that वो एक रूल है जो जब आप ये करोगे कि मैं इसलिए काम कर रहा हूँ बिकॉज आई एम हेल्पिंग माई सेल्फ, आई एम गेटिंग I have a purpose in life and that's the reason why I'm doing this. That is what is true retirement. It's not the money.
Very, very beautifully said. Retirement, I mean, retire when you want to, but not when you have to. So,
or work because you want to, not when you have to.
Sir, आपका I think एक ट्विटर पे बैटल हुआ था with Ashneer Grover, which was quite public and intense. So, what drove you for that stand, if you can comment?
I guess I don't want to comment on it too much. I think poor fellow has been hassled a lot right through. I was it was an off the cuff comment at that point, and I think he decided to show some documents about some other people which I had no idea about, and then that got him into trouble because there was documents he was not supposed to show, and that is what made it complicated. But more importantly, at that time, what was evident from whatever was in the news at that time, and things haven't been followed through, right? So was there were some issues with respect to governance, and those issues with respect to governance were not addressed meaningfully, and there seemed to be a public battle about ki some VCs are taking over a company and all that stuff. And I had my grouse with the VCs on this kind of thing as well, saying ki if there are things that are wrong and you're an entity that is going to buy a bank, because they were pitching to buy a bank, or they were at that point, I think PNC या कुछ तो था, PNC, I forget which bank it was, some bank they were buying. Then you have to address these allegations upfront, because people don't want these kind of things happening when you're a bank, RBI regulated kind of an entity, and that kind of drove me at that point. But I think in retrospect, probably, I mean, these battles are sometimes publicized more than they should be. कोई तो ट्विटर पे कुछ तो बोल रहा है, क्या फर्क पड़ता है उससे and all that. And but I mean, I think the impact to him was a little more dramatic, and it was not because of what I said, but because what he eventually put out is some kind of a defense to his position, saying मैं अकेला नहीं था, देखो ये सारे थे. एंड देन दोज ये सारे लाइक ये कहाँ से तुमने डॉक्यूमेंट किसको रिवील कर दिया, आप तो मतलब ये तो कॉन्फिडेंशियल डॉक्यूमेंट था, और फिर वो कहीं और चला गया, which I think was not this thing. But in general I feel that governance standards sometimes in companies do sometimes have to be addressed, and those governance standards, so it's not like we are everybody's made of, there's something bad in every company that happens, but certain things, we've also found that in a lot of companies these things happen, and we find them that as investors we would question the management, saying aapne aisa kyun kiya, but maybe these questions came out through a whistleblower, and maybe the VCs weren't asking the same kind of questions, and then that eventually these companies are going to go public, and you're going to have all these scars remaining behind, right? So you don't want those questions to be asked. So now, since then, by the way, a lot of companies have cleaned up shop, and there's a lot better governance standards that are happening even in the private arms. But I would say in general that was maybe it shouldn't have gone as public as it would have, and I didn't know that people would take this so this thing. It was an off the cuff remark, and in usual circumstances I would have probably looked at it and said, dude, if it hurts something so much, it's not something I would put out. But I would say what I had said initially was I mean, because he was railing against the whole world at that time, सब मतलब ये हो, हम सब ने ऐसे नहीं है, मतलब ये इशू है, आपको मतलब बताना पड़ेगा इसके बारे में क्या था. That was the thing. But I don't think, I mean, I think the people kept on saying कि you have, I don't think I did anything at that time. I was, like I said, it was mostly what he chose to say, and that thing never had any kind of an outcome, in the sense जो allegations थे वो भी हैं, उसका कोई मतलब क्लोजर नहीं हुआ है, and for whatever it is, the investors of that company have decided कि वो वाला part of history है, उसको छोड़ दो. So they have kind of wound it down. Maybe it's good the company now is bigger perhaps, or it is still acquiring a bank and doing things. Hopefully once it goes public, we'll have more meaning to all of these things when we see them.
आपने नितिन कामत के बारे में बात किया इन योर प्रीवियस आंसर्स. आपने बताया कि आप 2006 में उनको मिले थे जब वो रिलायंस सिक्योरिटीज़ के ब्रोकिंग कर रहे थे. तो हाउ इज़ लाइक The question is, Nitin Kamath से आपने overall क्या सीखा है? What is the most memorable interaction with him? And secondly, how did you meet him the first time and कैसे पूरा journey रहा है?
So good question. I think I don't remember how I met him actually the first time. I think very interesting because he was really trying to do something radical at the time. He was in 2008 when the markets were all down and all that. He was starting up new brokerage. He's like 20 rupees per lot. बहुत ज़्यादा है. 20 rupees per order चाहिए. Because if you have 5 lots of options or 10 lots of options, each lot is 50 size of Nifty. आप 20 रुपए चार्ज करोगे तो 40 पैसे आपको बनाने पड़ेंगे पर ऑप्शन जस्ट टू ब्रेक इवन विथ वन साइड ऑफ ब्रोकरेज. So 80 पैसा for two side brokerage, right? So 80 paisa is a lot. If the option itself is 5 rupees, that means it has to go to 5 rupees 80 paisa to break even with the brokerage or things like that, which is a lot. And he said, listen, if you buy 10 lots at a time, then you have to only break even with 8 paisa. So 5 rupees should become 5 rupees 8. At 5 rupees 10 you are profitable. So he wanted that and no broker was giving him this, so he said, I'll go and start my own brokerage. Interestingly, he never took any equity in his business. It was always him and his brother, and he started the business entirely on his own. And I remember I think he pointed this out. There was a trader G का एक forum था जहाँ पे लोग आके discuss करते थे, and he had asked me that will you be part of an advisory board, not board but an advisory board, which he had put together a bunch of very good people. So I said, yeah, I was almost unemployed at the time. Like I was telling you, I was in the middle of this learning algorithmic trading and doing things, but I was writing a lot on Capital Mind. And somebody on Trader G once asked, what is this Zerodha? And somebody said, Deepak Shenoy is on their advisory board, so it must be legit. Which is very nice for them to say. And he also said that interesting that at that time, Deepak was providing credibility to Zerodha, and it's quite interesting because at that time the whole concept was radical. लोग नहीं समझ रहे थे कि this is the future, and I knew this for a fact that if you reduce brokerage like this, it will cause a lot of big traders to move to him, and the money in the brokerage business is the big traders eventually. Traders are not, I mean, if you look at anybody of any magnificent size, they are not sitting here saying broker मेरे को बोलेगा 50 lot निफ्टी का लेना है, or 1000 lot निफ्टी का. They are making their own decisions. For them, the cost is a significant advantage. At best, they'll use some other broker. कोई खबर है तो बताओ, मतलब कुछ insights है तो बताओ what is interesting. But otherwise, the for futures and options, the traders were making their own decisions. So over time, they would make their own. So Nithin actually started it. He got into a very interesting time, because this is a time when NSC was fighting with Jignesh Shah of FT. Because FT said they will start their own stock exchange. They had MCX. They wanted to start something called MCX SX, जिसमें stocks भी trade होंगे.
FT is
Financial Technologies, which is now called 63 Moons or something. Okay. So they were having this battle. NSE was like, आप हमारे brokers को software provide करते हो, लेकिन आप खुद अपना exchange बनाओगे. And so NSE went and partnered with this company called Omnisys, which is in headquarters, not headquarters, but they make the software in a place called Udupi, which is close to where my hometown is, near Bangalore. It's interesting because Omnisys got an investment from NSE, and their software started to get more popular among the brokers. I think at that time, there were two choices. You could use Omnisys or you could use FT. Both of them had similar backend software. You could use some of the others. The Symphony and all came a little bit later, but there were a bunch of other software that you could use. And Zerodha started to slowly scale up. I think it was in 2014 or 2015 when he decided to make brokerage completely free. By that time, I had moved back to Bangalore. I was in Gurgaon and all that. I had moved back to Bangalore. I started Capital Mind, and we were just doing research. And 2016 is when I think Zerodha really took off, because digital started becoming more and more interesting. People started getting interested in stocks, and demonetization happened. डीमोनेटाइजेशन के बाद लोगों के पास पैसे थे बैंक अकाउंट में, वो कहाँ गए, म्यूचुअल फंड में गए, डायरेक्ट स्टॉक्स में गए, ये वो, और इतना बड़ा रैली हुआ 2017 में, लोग people started, because by that time I remember I wrote a post on this also. Zerodha was that time a third or fourth largest broker in the country, out of the blue, in terms of number of clients and all that, because they started to make brokerage completely free for equity trades. I don't know if they started the mutual fund thing yet, but they were definitely doing stocks and F&O in a big way. They already had this software called Kite, which was starting to get popular, and by 2017, I think they were the rage, and by 2019 or 20, I think they were one of the largest brokers in the country. So they slowly kind of scaled up during that time. He maintained only one thing, that I don't want any venture investment or anything like that. I think he's done a fantastic job keeping the company private, and I was hoping that he'll list one day, so we'll be able to buy into this thing. But he has no. At least right now, he has no intentions. But the thing is, the company rose with an amazingly small team initially, and grew. Of course, they had a lot of people to handle it, but the core team has roughly been the same and been together so far. Amazing execution skills, and very reasoned. यानी कि किसी भी चीज को ऐसे ही लगा दो. There's a lot of thought process behind it. They were the first to give auction markets. I think one of the first to give auction markets in their software, so you can go and buy auction stocks there. They have a stock lending thing, but right now it's person to person. But there is something. There are IPOs that happen directly. There are mutual funds. There are government bonds. They've added features one after the other. Very solid set of guys. And I think now they've invested in us, so you should consider everything I say biased because they have invested in our company. But I think I really admire what they've done.
What's the most memorable interaction with Nithin Kamath?
That first one I remember very carefully because that was very interesting. That because I had still in my mind about how he showed me all of that stuff. I think Nitin's. I mean, I've had many interactions. We had even a podcast with him in his office at the time, and I mean, I can't remember any one. I mean, more important thing than the one that I told you in the beginning when I met him the first time.
But 2 or 3 things that you've learned from him, or maybe you like a lot about him. वो traits तो मुझे भी चाहिए.
I think he's definitely very humble in terms of this thing. He doesn't go around like showing off things, and I find that very nice because I mean I think it's also like a little bit of a Bangalore thing. That is also quintessentially Bangalore, where you are humble because you like to be. It's the natural way you are. It's not like he doesn't want good stuff. It's great. The first thing when I saw his car, I remember in 2006 also when we had met, I said I want a car like this. At some point I will have a good car. And this, so that was something that I know that he likes and he does it. But he's very straightforward. And second thing is he's a very deep thinker. So you'll see this. I mean, he was not as public about his views before 2019 or so, I think. Before that, I don't think he wrote as much. Now his writings have become more, but all his writings are actually his thought processes. It's not like कोई और उसके लिए लिख रहा है. But he writes these things down the way he thinks. The good clarity of thought. And I love clarity of thought because sometimes I write to clear my own head. So to a large extent, that's what we like. In fact, he gave me a nice. I wrote a book called Money Wise. Nithin had written a small note for me saying, whenever I don't understand anything that's happening in the market, I go and check what Deepak Shenoy has written, and it kind of helps me understand. So I like that because I like the same thing. I like anyone who kind of deciphers complex stuff in a nice way. I think and he does talk about options markets, talks about a bunch of things and all that. And that's one thing I really admire about him. Also, the fact that he's so fit is so awesome. I mean, look, the kind of physical trouble that he's gone to in recent times. If anybody else had gone through it, I don't think they would have been able to come out. He's been able to work himself out, and amazing. He's brought him. I mean, it's so inspiring, right? And plus, I'm like the way I am. I need to fix myself. That's what inspires me. At some level, I should do something about it. I've been talking about it for the longest time, but yeah, it does. That's something that really inspires me about him. He runs such a big company, and yet he has all the time to fix himself. And what is my excuse?
आपने बताया सो आपने मनी वाइज बुक लिखी है सो अकॉर्डिंग टू यू व्हाट इज द सिंगल मोस्ट अनवाइज थिंग यू सी पीपल doing or making a mistake when it comes to their financial journey?
It's interesting. I don't know what every time you ask me, maybe the single most important thing will change. Howard Marks has a book called The Most Important Thing, because he says every time I say something, I start off with the most important thing. So he wrote a book called The Most Important Thing, which is a list of all his most important things, right? So मेरा भी most important वो change होता रहेगा.
अभी क्या है?
अभी क्या है? Currently, I feel like people are more focused on the destination than the journey. कि आप there's I don't know, there's a ghazal of some sort, and I like ghazals. Well, I forget the exact lyrics, so I won't talk about that right now. But okay, there is.
I was going to ask you to sing that.
Bad idea. Terrible. No more podcast after that. बंद करो इसको. वो YouTube ही बैन कर देगा. नहीं, sorry, but musical scale पे बहुत कम है. जब तक बातें कर रहा था ठीक था, ये गाने वाने पे आ गया बस. नहीं, but the idea that you that we go through life with these ambitions, we go through life, मतलब हम लोग ये कुछ करना चाहते हैं, लेकिन वो करने के टाइम पे आप अभी नहीं कुछ कर, अभी नहीं जी रहे हो, and you're giving up your today for your tomorrow and then highlighting the tomorrow. और ये उल्टे वाली भी चीजें हैं जो अब लोग बोरो करते हैं. एक जमाना था, my father was a banker, and once I remember I'd gone to somebody's house, and a fantastic house. Daddy, this house is great. One day we should have such a house. He said, it's not his house. I said, what do you mean? We went to his house. No, it's the bank's house. मतलब गिरवी रख के अगर आपने, my dad was trying to tell me that, गिरवी रख के अगर आपने कुछ किया है तो वो आपका नहीं है जब तक कि आप लोन क्लियर नहीं कर लेते, right? So in that sense, you can't give away your tomorrow for your today like that also. So there are equations on both sides, but I find more and more people talking about saving ye, wo ye, without a clear thing of what they're going to do with the money and how they're going to live there. I think that is a problem. And also, I think the biggest thing is people are unwilling to take some form of risk. आप लोगों को देखते हो करियर में जाते हैं, वो एक जॉब के बाद एक जॉब, कभी बीच में वो ब्रेक नहीं लेना चाहते. पीपल टेल मी करियर में ब्रेक हो गया तो this, but उस ब्रेक में maybe you'll learn something, you'll do something, you'll experiment with something. That risk taking, by the way, has changed. No? From when I started off my career, people told me आपको IT कंपनी में जॉब नहीं मिला है, इसलिए आपने अपने खुद की कंपनी. This was 1998. People used to tell me कि you didn't get a job, that's why you are starting your own company. That time it was not even sexy to have a startup. Now it is, but I think that risk-taking ability has been low in people in general. Now things are getting better. We should take more risks. More people should become entrepreneurs. More people should try different things that are of this thing and move into different domains. Not because, but the world is changing. The world is changing so fast that आप अगर आप कुछ भी करोगे अभी, it will get obsolete very fast. चाहे AI ले गया या कुछ और ले गया, ये वो, at some point there will be some AI avatar of me, मैं तो कुछ टाइप करूंगा वो मेरी तरह ही बोलेगा. तो क्या मेरा बोलना एक टाइम पे redundant हो गया? The only way I can do is I can evolve, I can get into a better, it's not what I spoke in the last 10 years that is important, but I have to find something new to speak, not new to think about, new to talk about. Everybody has to evolve. So I think this evolutionary process somewhere in the middle got derailed. Maybe it's this thing. That is something that I find in financial life also. People have, there's only formulas of, मैं लोगों को बोलता हूँ, देखो जो स्टार्टअप वाले हैं, जो who become my customers, उन्होंने 1 लाख इन्वेस्ट किया होता है कंपनी में, 100 करोड़ बन गया है. तो मैं पहले कहता हूँ सर आपका XRR मैं नहीं कर सकता, आपका XRR है मतलब 1 लाख से 100 करोड़ तो मैं नहीं कर सकता, वो इम्पॉसिबल है. अब you have to compromise on return because you're going to public markets. But if you have an idea that can take you forward from here, you should do that. Don't invest with me. But many times once you've done your 100 crores ना, वो मतलब वो एक फटीक सा पहुंच जाता है लाइक बॉस अब उतना नहीं करना मेरे को. आई डोंट वांट दैट मच मगजमारी इन माय लाइफ. सो या आई विल डू समथिंग. बट सम पीपल गो ऑन टू बिल्ड 100,000 crore वाला कंपनीज. Some people will say बस ये हो गया, I'll build from here maybe 100 to 200, 200 to 300, but that's where I want to be, which is also fine. I think that is the this thing. But the point is when they also tell me, यार when I started with this one, like, I didn't think it'll become 100 crores. मैं तो कुछ बनाने का सोच रहा था. And now when you have the 100, you think that you don't want to lose it. You want to take lower risks and all that stuff. But I think everybody has a risk. Almost all of these people who came in and said we'll do low risk has eventually come back and say I want to start another business. I want to invest in another business. I want to do something that's interesting. So these are changes that I think will come regardless of where you are. But my larger and I think the grouse is people don't take enough risks and people don't live their lives enough. You know, with enough focus on their happiness. I think these are the two big things I feel today. But कल को पूछो मैं कुछ और बोल दूंगा. मैं fire पे I had a problem with fire, but I think I don't have a problem with fire per se. I have a problem with
RE.
the RE part की उस पे मतलब क्या ही करोगे, and it'll lead to disappointment later. As in, most people, once somebody told me that one of the biggest problems, apparently there's a funda of how when people retire, their health deteriorates. Because when you're charged up and you have that, purpose, things change. But when you retire, your health takes a toll because your mental, this thing is not, it's not for everybody. I mean, I'm saying for some people, especially if you're very well driven and all that, but you'll always have something to do. And you'll always want to have something to do. That's the main thing.
There's a vulnerable story about you not having enough money to pay for a fridge after getting married and the check bounced. What happened that time?
This is 2005, I think. I was, so at that time I was working for my own startup, which I started with these 4 other friends at the time. And there wasn't that much money that I had. I just gotten married and we were moving to an apartment, and I had to buy the basic stuff, sofa, ye, wo, and all that. After I hadn't checked. एक फ्रिज खरीद लिया, चेक दे दिया. The bank manager called me and said, "Dude, you don't have the balance." So I'm thinking now I can borrow from my company, like advance le liya, salary, ye, wo. I said, then I asked my wife, and she said, "Yeah, don't worry, take it from my account. I'll give you a check, and then you can pay it." So I took her check and paid back. So I didn't have money to pay. I might have been able to borrow from. I mean, my company is different from you, right? So, and plus it was multiple people own that company. So it's not like you can own any balance from there and all that. But I was literally living on the edge at that time. It was 2005. So I'm lucky, my wife had the money and she.
And I think you jokingly say that you married for capital, for money, right?
I married her for the money. I tell her that. She's like, okay, it's interesting because technically she was more qualified than me. I got my second degree only later. She was also richer than me. I was almost like, man, if I wasn't the handsome devil that I wanted. Maybe sure, but I don't know. I mean, it was. I mean, we keep teasing each other about it, so it's like good fun.
And इसका क्या स्टोरी है कि आपके फर्स्ट ऑफिस में वो लिफ्ट जो है वो 3 फ्लोर्स तक ही जाता था, and then you had to walk the other 2
yes.
floors.
So that was the first office of Capital One. So Capital One started in very various places. So the first company that there was we were, in fact, I'm very grateful to Vijay also, because Vijay Shekhar Sharma of PTM, because in his office in Bangalore, A friend Pratyush Pratyush Prasanna was working there, and I said I want to start something. I want to look for a place to kind of work out from because घर पे काम नहीं होता है. He said, come here. Vijay said you should promote startups and you should give, if they need space, you give it to them. It's not this thing. So they housed me. I think I was there for a month or a few months before I hired someone, and then I realized there's not enough space here. We moved to another place, and we moved to a few places around in Bangalore. And before we decided we'll get our own office. So till then we were sharing office space with another company and so on. And then when we decided to get our own space, there was this building on the 5th floor of a certain. There was a building which had 5 floors, but the lift only went to the 3rd, and then you had to climb up 2 floors after that. So it was some kind of a shitty floor. I don't know, but everything seemed to be all right in terms of the paperwork. But the lift didn't go up till the 5th floor. So we were like, you have to come up to the 3rd floor and walk up 2 floors to the 5th. And that's when we started the PMS as well. The PMS started in 2017. So वहाँ पे पहले we used to run it as a research firm, and then we ran it as a PMS. We were there for about a year and a half more. We took another floor in that building where the lift actually came. And then we said, yeah, this is too small for us. We moved to where we currently are.
Nice.
Which is now, we started off with 1 floor here. Now we have 4 floors.
Wow.
We rented 4 floors, about 12,000 square feet.
And how big is the entire team?
Right now, probably a little north of 75 because we have the PMS and the mutual fund. So we have about 75 plus. There is a possibility we will outgrow this area as well. So we have taken on another space, and that will come up soon. So we will split the AMC and PMS teams into 2 different locations. And we also have a location in Baroda. We have a location which is a backup center in Bangalore, which is for business continuity planning. So we've slowly grown. Hopefully we'll have a place in Bombay as well.
Yeah, looking forward to that place in Mumbai, and next podcast we can have it in your office in Bombay as well. Fantastic. Thank you so much for doing this. It was super fun. Last question, which is a tricky one, I ask all my guests. If you were in the shoes of Kushal Lodha and if you were interviewing Mr. Deepak Shenoy, what is one question you would like to ask him towards the end?
Wow. Okay. This is a very interesting question. I had not practiced for this.
You had not practiced for anything because I didn't send you the list of questions at all.
I had no idea what. I mean, I'm better off like this. If I come in practice, it's a waste of time. But yes. So, what would I ask Kushal? What would I ask Deepak Shenoy if I were basing? I think I wrote this post a long time back, and maybe I would ask me about this. Deepak, once upon a time, you wrote about how much is enough and how much is enough now. Is that still valid? And you've written some numbers. Is that still valid? That's the question I would probably ask. Because
how much is enough? Is that still valid?
It's a brilliant. So I keep thinking about this. I don't know the answer to whether I know the answer or not. As in, all I know is there is an enough. But I've realized that enough has 2 criteria. One is what you need. And I think that number hasn't changed. I wrote this post in 2011 or 12. I said that number would be probably between 10 and 20 crores. I think that was enough for anyone to lead a luxurious life. And I think I stand by that even today in 2025.
I agree.
Is ki boss, matlab kahin bhi raho. Unless you want to buy a mad property in Mumbai, which you just told me prices are like 100 crores or 200 crores. चलो वो सब तो नहीं होता. लेकिन आप normal जगह पे human जहाँ पे रहते हैं, मतलब अगर आप उस जगह पे घर लेना चाहते हो, यहाँ पता नहीं, मतलब गॉड्स रहते हैं यार, इसलिए तो तुम्हारा लाइक
नाइस वे ऑफ कवरिंग अप. यहाँ गॉड्स रहते हैं. नाइस वे, आई लाइक दैट.
सो नहीं बिकॉज़ यू पे दिस मच, दैट्स व्हाट आई एम सेइंग. तो जहाँ पे नॉर्मल प्राइसेस होते हैं वहाँ पे आप घर खरीद सकते हो, एंड यू कैन because you need a house which is of your own, so that you can get the emotional satisfaction of owning a house. Not because I don't think real estate is a great investment in my view, but if you have that much money, that enough part where you can deal with kids' education, your own expenditures and all that, unless you're like flamboyantly, and that doesn't change for me. It won't probably change for me because I don't think money will change what I do or spend or eat, and I'll still like my idli with only chutney in some corner of Bangalore, where you have to stand on the road and eat it, and I will love it no matter what. But one thing is that enough does not mean you have to stop. Means that अगर आप 20 पहुंच गए और आप, even the person who thinks 20 is enough can build a business that is 100,000 crores or 50,000 crores in size, not because they want the money. It's no longer the money that drives you. It's the idea of doing something bigger, right? So I think that enough has two connotations. I'm not doing this for the money beyond that. I'm not there yet, but whenever I am, I will beyond that still keep doing what I'm doing because I love what I'm doing. I just love it. I'm passionate about everything, whether it's stocks, equities, macro, bonds, interest rates, name it, and I find it exciting. But I'll do it because I find it exciting. And if in the process it becomes bigger than what my original numbers were, that does not mean that ये तो मतलब इसने बोला था 20 करोड़ enough है, अब ये तो पता नहीं कहाँ जा रहा है. And I don't think that is I'm doing any more of it because it should be worth more. I mean, it should be because I think it's worth more. But I think also that if you build a big business, a lot of people in your business, in your company, who you give ESOPs and all that stuff will benefit a lot. So you have to keep growing it, and growth is the core aspect of this thing. So I would say, and my word enough means that where I feel that I will be satisfied, but beyond that, it's no longer a number I care about.
Yeah. Very, very well said. Beautiful conversation. I think I've had one of the most insightful and very lovely conversation after a very long time. Thank you so much for doing this, and wish you the best with your mutual fund, which has like already killed it in the market in a span of what, 1.5 months. I think you're already at 130 crores.
Anyway, we're small to me.
No, I mean that's really very good, and I'm sure it's going to just grow from here leaps and bounds. And I wish you the best. Thank you so much once again for doing this and coming to Bombay. And I know we've been coordinating since a long time, but finally this happened, and I am super grateful to you for your time.
Ari, thank you so much, Kushal. I wish you all the best. I think your podcasts have been super insightful. I've been watching them for a while. I'll wish you all the best. I hope next time we come, we can do a podcast in our office, but also that your office grows leaps and bounds from here.
Thank you so much. Means a lot. Thank you so much. अगर आपको ये वीडियो पसंद आया होगा तो I'll request you to share it with all your friends and subscribe to our channel so that we can give you more value additive content in the shortest amount of time. हमको ये बताइए कि आपको कौन से काइंड ऑफ गेस्ट चाहिए. हमको ये बताइए कि कौन से क्वेश्चंस मुझे नहीं पूछने चाहिए थे, कौन से क्वेश्चंस मुझे और पूछने चाहिए थे ताकि आपको और ज्यादा वैल्यू मिल सके, और कौन से ऐसे पार्ट्स है जो आपको बिल्कुल पसंद नहीं आए ताकि हम लोग ये पार्ट्स ट्रिम कर सके फ्यूचर एपिसोड्स में. सो थैंक यू सो मच once again for watching this episode, and keep sharing all our episodes with your friends and keep giving us feedback so that we can improve and come up with better quality content.